welcome to the final episode of Decomposing Worm, a worm analysis podcast. That's Clarence. He was the first-time reader and literary expert.
And that's Matias. He has read the story before.
In this 13-and-a-half-ish episode series, we used critical theory to explore the superhero web serial Worm from a high-level perspective, covering Worm in 6 300,000-ish word chunks.
Mm-hmm. And today is part 2 of Book 6, Perspectives. So this will be our last time applying literary theory to Worm, kind of combing through arcs 27 through Teneral with a few different lenses, I think, this week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and actually, I think we both agreed to basically open up our analysis to most of the novel, obviously trying to center it around things that happen in this last section, but certainly not being limited, because this is the first time.
I definitely didn't limit myself to that.
Yeah, because we've now read all of Worm. This is the episode covering all of Worm. Yeah. Which is a lot to cover. It's a lot for any sort of analysis to cover anything, just because you're coming through 1.6 million words. It's a Harry Potter series and a half, so quite a bit to cover. Of course, as usual, if you have not finished Worm, please do before you listen to this. This is a full spoilers discussion, but I expect you already knew that. So
this deep in, you should know the ins and outs of everything.
Yeah, hopefully you're experts just like us, right? I mean, okay, we're not like experts, but we've read it, we've done some analysis.
Now we have
quasi-expertise, absolutely, yeah. If you've read Worm and listened to We've Got Worm or Us or both, I would call you an expert on some level. So yeah, this is the final episode. Let's get into it. We're going to, of course, do our character studies, our essays, and have little bits of discussion in between. Then we're going to reflect on Decomposing Worm as a concept and talk about what's next, if anything.
I feel like at this point I should insert the eyebrows, but I can't because it's not visual. But just know that they are there.
The eyebrows.
Yeah, those suggestive eyebrows where they go up and down.
Like a waggle?
I guess. I don't know. In cartoons when they makes that little noise where it's like ba-da-da-da-da.
Uh-huh.
And the eyebrows move. Yep, there you go.
I think I could imagine it. Yeah, no, sure. Okay, let's get into your character study.
Yes,
who did you do this time, Clarence?
Okay, so I did Glasstig-Winier, who I have expressly pointed out that I like a lot, but particularly in this arc because we kind of get her full narrative in a way that we didn't really get before. So I sort of just kind of wandered around a bit in her character study, so we'll just kind of go along. She's very she's sort of in the shadows, and when we first kind of begin to interact with her, and she's not really in the shadows like ominous sort of thing. It's just that she's sort of this thing that holds potential power and is this sort of mythic character, especially since she's kind of wrapped in riddles and she has this sort of glittery dark kind of visual aesthetic. It's very interesting because that image that we are presented with is the one that she has constructed of herself, right? That she's we aren't entering into this as her origins. This is her mythic tale at its end that she's sort of laid out in her own specific words, so she can kind of make sense of what knowledge she has. Yes, the words I think are my absolute favorite part of her because we talk about words a lot. And the way that some others like Jack and Taylor use communication and use words to get people to do things much more in a very directly rhetorical sense. But with Glasstig-Winier, she's much more it's less of getting people to do a particular thing. She doesn't weaponize her words. It's much more of she kind of presents information that she knows and isn't necessarily trying to get anyone to act a particular way. She just is imparting knowledge.
She's a lot more poetic in that it's more about, it's not about persuasion. It's the feeling and nuances, and I mean, she wants you to understand, but also like if you don't, that's kind of on you.
Yeah. There isn't like this. It's much more like poetic rather than like strictly communicative. It got me thinking about like particularly the conversations that like Taylor and I don't know why I keep returning to Taylor and Jack, but they mostly because they're like sort of like the speaker type individuals, right? Speaker type characters that we have. The way that she kind of uses words is more of like, it's less of like a prelude to violence, but rather like a sort of a very particular shade of characterizing and sort of like labeling individual like roles and importance and like time and all of this. I just thought it was interesting because they speak about like violence and action and all the things that like are very important within the tale, but like it's none of it is really like meant as direct force, you know.
None of the words are meant as direct force, is what you mean.
Wait, what do you mean? What'd you say?
None of the words are meant as direct force, is what you mean, right?
Yeah. But what was I? Oh yeah. Instead of like this sort of like action-based sort of progression, it's much more about like building a vocabulary for like the phenomenon of the flapping beings, and I mean, she's not really like a Cassandra type necessarily, but she definitely has that sort of feel in terms of like having knowledge, but not necessarily because of the vocabulary that she's built that no one else is really privy to. She kind of like makes herself into that kind of mythic figure.
Yeah, I wonder, part of it obviously is that she wants to distance herself from, you know, who she considers mere mortals, not Faerie, right?
Yeah, she's very like aware of her like separation from everyone else.
I think at the end she implies that not only does she not feel human, she doesn't even feel parahuman.
Yeah,
because that's something that she's trying to get to.
There was a particular line about like that returning to like where she's like, I want to be more human, never human per se, just more human, parahuman, that sort of thing, where it's like,
yeah,
she spent all the time in therapy thinking and sort of like rebuilding herself into something that is separate from Scion and the narrative that she has placed herself at the end of. So now she's just in the aftermath, sort of, you know, kind of having to rebuild or like completely build a new vocabulary for herself, which we see that where she like shifts the way that she like speaks about her like the like dead parahumans, they're like passengers that she's like carting around, and where she like switches from instead of just like mere shadows, these spirits were her warriors, right? So it's like she kind of, I don't know, I feel like she places so like even more weight on the connotations around words and like the power of words rather than what they can. I mean,
it seems to me like she definitely views words as like framing thinking in addition to just communicating, like by changing the word for her from ghosts or shades to warriors, that humanizes them more, and she's doing that intentionally to view them less as tools and more as fallen people.
Yeah.
I also find it interesting at that moment, just to finish off, is that she doesn't speak at the announcement ceremony because she knows that her speech will give her away. She's still not returned away from her alien speech.
Yeah, she's built this new sort of, she's like at the beginning of building a new vocabulary for herself, but like she hasn't fully embodied it yet, right? They're like, because she spent so long with like a specific way that she thinks about herself in like terminology, that I feel like that switch can be, especially when it's like she's left in the wake of what she has, you know, spent her life preparing for. That's a lot to like rebuild, I think. Yes, but yeah, I don't know. She's very, I feel like she's like, I don't want to say like oddball, even though I do like the feel of that term. It's just, she's like she's set apart from a lot of the other parahumans in this story because like Worm is driven so like intensely forward by like direct action and like very strategic tactical planning and like, you know, like very harsh like verbal sparring and this sort of thing. Like there's a lot of like forward momentum in both like the plot and like the rhythm of like the composition of it. Mm-hmm. And she as a character she doesn't really operate that way. Mm-hmm. Where she already has the information that everyone is sort of seeking, and then she's been in this sort of anticipatory state for like the majority of Worm, just kind of like in the background. And then she doesn't necessarily think of herself with the same like proclivity for violence, I guess, because she acknowledges that she has like the capacity for it, but she doesn't really like when she's talking to Yamada. Yes. Mm-hmm. When Yamada like directly asks her, is like, do you think that you tend toward conflict? She's like, no, you know, that you know, the passengers like been more patient and more relaxed because it's like anticipating the duties at the end, right?
Yeah, it seems to me that she's not. I think she is one of Scion's shards because if she second triggered, which I think she did, then it would have to be a live shard, so it can't be one of Eden's. It has to be one of his. But even so, she doesn't have a conflict drive like everyone else does. And I think that's made into a fact by the fact that she just turned herself in and went to the birdcage and just sat there without any escalation for a very, very long time.
Yeah, because the concept of like even her like gathering of passengers and the conflict that comes with that, like inherently, I suppose, of like all of her you know, murdering and such. It isn't driven like by anything besides collecting.
Yeah.
You know,
collecting in self-defense, it seems like, but not like real self-defense. Like she could have run away, but yeah. So she sort of has this like knowing, waiting patience that is just kind of present. But I mean, if you look at it like her narrative chronologically, I suppose she does have that sort of she does fit into that sort of what we said last time, that it was like a Bildungsroman, perhaps this like coming of age, is that she, in her mind, she's like in that sort of childlike stasis, right? And then she's like attached to Scion as perhaps a father figure or like this like knowing being. And then, you know, where she's kind of like after everything, she has this realization of like the folly of man, which I suppose is tied into like parental disappointment and all of this. So which observation is that?
When Yamada is talking to her about like this state of adolescence that she's sort of entering into, about like rebelling against a parental figure, and like how she's kind of like become this someone who is looking for definition after Scion has been defeated. Where she's sort of like, now she like enters into this state of, I don't think it's moratorium, but it's one of those, it's like one of the 4 late stage adolescent choices of like, where she like enters into like an identity crisis, I think. Yeah. I don't know. I took educational psychology like a while ago, and so I don't remember precisely. But the one where it's like now that she doesn't have that like standard and stable goal to be working towards, now that she sees that as something flawed, like she kind of has to like, you know, find herself to be something that she doesn't know herself to be yet, I guess. That didn't, I don't know if that made sense. But she's in this like state of flux.
Yeah, well, yeah, she's trying to be something new, something different.
Yeah.
Even though she doesn't quite know what that is yet. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. But then we see her where she doesn't necessarily, like, even after she's like re-examining herself and redefining and kind of like laying out these different things, these different like structural ways that she can kind of like, you know, remake herself. There's still like this latent fear, I think, of like repeating the mistakes of her predecessor, of like, I wrote down the arrogance of the unknowingly ignorant.
Okay.
Which is like like someone who like doesn't know that they
don't know. Yeah.
Don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Where they don't know that they need to change, and I suppose even if one is in that state of flux and like a transformation, there is still that like underlying fear, I think, of like not knowing enough to like not changing enough, perhaps, because she still has this sort of like the specter of her past actions behind her, right? Where she's like in her conversation with Yamada, she's talking about like Yamada, sorry.
No, I mean, no,
she's talking about
fine too.
The like present tense or past tense of like having
one
murdered or
murders. Yeah.
Yeah.
Someone who has murdered or someone who does murder.
Yeah, and then like later on, she has that whole conversation with Nilbog, I think. Yes, and
Nilbog, and Bonesaw as well, or Riley.
Yeah, and Bonesaw,
I should say. That's another case of names.
Yeah, where they're sort of in this new state, but they're still like there's like vestigial feelings and thought paths. You know what I mean? That like are difficult to like fully extract, and excavate. So she's sort of like still in this state of flux, which, I mean, I suppose that's sort of how we all are after we've gone through a state of transformation. There's still that like, you're still sort of moving, where it's like the sand that never quite settles.
Yeah, we've talked about before, identity is something that you are never, you have never fully become, and you have never fully grasped what you are, because every single moment that you do that, you are slightly changing from the moment before. Yeah.
I don't know. It was just very her preoccupation with words, I think, was just it was a unique approach, I think. No, not a unique approach. It's a unique like understanding of it, and just in terms of the individual characters that we've been introduced to, I think, in Worm,
which
because
is
she sits on like the back of her heels, like when she speaks and when she like shares her knowledge or interacts or speaks about herself, like there's this almost this like distance between like her words versus the like senses and actions and like the physicality of what happens.
Okay.
I don't know. Well, it's just so many of the other ones are very like direct. Like there's so much direct conversation that happens, where she seems like she is perhaps a bit like untethered to it, but then also like very aware of it, of like what's happening and what needs to happen. Does that make sense?
I think so. So you're talking about how when she talks, it's like it remains in the abstract rather than like tying back to. It's almost always just about like the concepts and things rather than like this is how things are. We need to go this way or that way. It's like it's always playing in a state of metaphor or close to metaphor. Or hypothetical.
She's sort of like she remains in the hypothetical even when she is in like the thick of it.
Right. Even when she's talking about the real or like trying to communicate things, she remains fairly to a higher level in conversation, never quite dipping down.
Yeah, but I don't know. She's a very interesting character to me. Just because she like stood out. I mean, not that all of them are like
they all
similar,
stick out, but of course. But,
like they're all very unique in each individual way. But yeah, she seemed like she's like that. I don't know, like the book that you forget is on the shelf until it's like something.
Yeah, it's interesting
vitally
how, like,
important to run across.
Yeah. I find it interesting how she comes in right at the end, right? There's only one significant moment with her before, and that's a very short conversation with Panacea, right?
Yeah.
And then she's only
and then suddenly
present.
She's like essential.
Yes, yeah. It's only in the last two arcs that she's at all like textually significant. Maybe last three. Like Eidolon's interlude, a conversation on the cliffside, and then especially during Spec, but almost Spec. Nowhere else. And yet she is like she talks about the themes of the entire novel. She's the first interlude, and she's right there at Taylor's End. It's interesting.
Yeah, she really sort of is like. I feel like we talked about the whole deal with like a flip book sort of individuals where like we don't know. Or individuals that like fade or like are waiting in the wings or like go off, and then we come back and we like interact with them again, and they have like different sort of like we see their tale as it like progresses, but not directly. I feel like she's one of those that's just like in the choir seats, you know, like not like at the organ, but like definitely in the choir seats where it's like, you know, she's present and you can like feel her presence, but like she's not, you know, in the action, you know.
I think I can kind of understand what you're saying. Yeah, even though we're being just as abstract as she is.
I know, it's very I will, because she kept using all these like a theater.
I mean, she really does feel like you know, like Oberon or the Fairy Queen in like Midsummer's Night Dream, where it's like
like the ones that like are sort of like floating in like the space, and they never quite leave the stage, but you know that they are there, but they're not totally there.
They're not the ones taking the action. Yeah.
So I mean, her name, you know, her self-appointed name really fits, I think, in terms of how she like, you know, inhabits her role as the Fairy Queen. Yeah.
If you're okay with skipping around a bit of just like analyses and stuff, it's just some stuff I was thinking about is how like there are times where she, for most of the book, she really does seem like fairly mature as like, you know, she's the wise, the alien crazed woman, right? But in that talk with Yamada, she really does seem like to have regressed a bit, where, you know, she's much shorter to threaten violence. There's a part where Yamada goes to talk to Chevalier, right? And she pulls out a shade to listen in. And it doesn't even seem like a tactical listening in. It really feels like a child like listening in to her parents or something. Obviously that they don't function as her parents at all. Like, that's not the metaphor, but just it's very like she feels a little shameful about it. It's more just to find out what they're saying about her rather than like, you know, any plans or anything. It's just that like in that moment in particular, I was very much like, oh, this is a insecure kid. Well,
it's just she felt like her theatricality had such assurance to it, you know, that she seemed so sure and you know, solid in the plan that was going to occur. And especially since she's held that knowledge, you know, before anyone else that we had seen, she seemed to be like in the know. Even, you know, Cauldron and all of them knew already, but like she was the first one that we saw who seemed to know what was going on. In any sort of, you know, relative totality. And I feel like that sort of that the not going to plan of Sion's like final, you know, fight was, I feel like that sort of broke her assurance, and in doing so sort of left her bereft of knowing who she was and what her role was. Just like in life. Because I mean, what do you do after you have gotten to the end of your tale? You know? But
so if you're okay with also another angle as of just like comparing her directly to Taylor and her relationship with her dad.
Go ahead.
Or just parents in general. So Taylor lost one parent, right? And then in the aftermath of that, her other parent basically like broke temporarily, at least. Couldn't take care of her. And for the Fairy Queen, I guess technically one parent died, although I don't know how much she like. It's kind of like a parent that died before her birth, sort of. Because she, like, you know, never knew her, but she knows that there's like a loss, and Sion is the like aimless parent. But then at the end, of course, he gets totally broken, and seeing that sort of breaks her too. I think she was crying too at the end, or at least clearly emotionally shocked.
I don't know if it's just like parent and child, or just like empathetic, but I feel like that is like one of the most terrifying experiences is to like see a parent who like never cry or like break down, because then like everything that seems stable is suddenly like thrown into like, you know, topsy-turvy, like, you know, like where, you know, you're sort of like left in this ocean of like who knows what's going to happen next? There's nothing to hold on to, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, so it just seems like it becomes quite unstable at the end. Her like identity. I mean, before she sort of like spends all this time kind of rebuilding it. But yeah, she defined herself so strongly like by her nature, I guess, or by in reference to Sion and that whole sort of situation that, I don't know, when she was left alone, she was sort of all of the like structures, I guess, and like paths that she had created of herself kind of had to be like redefined, or like not redefined, but like renamed, which I suppose in and of itself could be a redefinition. But yeah,
she's a very complex individual for the small amount of time we see her.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we don't know what her trigger event was, and yet
we don't.
It was still
I feel like the closest to like her like background that we get is Eidolon, who kind of has this recollection of like when she turns herself in, but besides that, it's kind of, I don't know, we don't really see the origin of it, but we feel that actually, I suppose that's interesting that we don't have that, but then we have so much of her identity like articulated later, is that it kind of like her passenger and like her parahuman identity sort of overtook whatever identity existed before, in a way that she like it seemed like in like a voluntary way that the K-53s did not have, but like that she sort of like how Contessa was just kind of like, I have to choose this. I feel like Glastic Winya also made a similar choice.
What's interesting to me on some levels is how Taylor otherizes her passenger a lot, right? She views it as a separate thing that's like touching her and controlling her and influencing her, while the Faerie Queen and really most parahumans either don't think about it or just viewed it as a part of themselves. And I think it's especially interesting with the Faerie Queen, with Glastic Winya, because she knows how influenced by her shard she is. Like, there's a conversation of like, she triggered very young and it's become much of a part of her. Obviously, a lot of her priorities were based off of the shard, or at least something that her normal human mind viewed from the shard's perspective and then like internalized.
Yeah.
And some significance with that. I think before near the beginning of the podcast, we talked a little bit about how powers can sort of be, they can be viewed as mental illness, right? And how we sort of deal with that.
Yeah.
And I think this is a couple of different approaches that people do. Some people, they otherize their mental illness, right? They say that like my depression is a part of my brain that hates me or whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
This is something that I can fight against because it's not me. It's not really me. But at the same time, like, it is really you. It's just a part that you are trying to change. Yeah. And that's more the Glastic Winya perspective, I think, where it's like it has influenced her so much that like she is that it's inextricable from her identity, but she's trying to change.
There's pieces of herself that she can't separate from it.
Yeah, but she can change like its manifestation.
Yeah. It's hers is much more like inculcated, I think, is the term that I'm thinking of. Or like all sort of like wrapped up in herself. Where there is no sort of division between self and other, I think, in her mind. Where she just sort of has become this being in like totality of it, of like this sort of like third entity, I guess. Not entity like the flapping beings, but like there was a person before and then now there's a passenger that joined, and now there's like a third iteration of self, I guess.
Yeah, it's neither of those things.
Yeah, but yeah, that's sort of my evaluation of her.
Hell yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts before we move on?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. If anyone else has any observations about Glastic Winya, please send us a message.
Yes, please share.
We would respond somehow. If not in an actual episode. Either by email or in the discussion thread for sure.
Yeah,
or
send
on Discord.
us emails.
Yes, that will definitely still be active.
We miss missives.
Okay, let us start with my character study before we get into the essays. 1 second. So I was looking at Eidolon, as I mentioned before, because there was just too much to talk about in one particular section.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a couple of particular angles I wanted to look at about how Eidolon can be seen as a great example of some of the trappings of toxic masculinity, and also of just like a, classic example. I mean, actually, he is a tragic character now that I think about it. Like,
yeah.
He starts off, when we see him in the story, at the place of like a glory, and then he descends over time, and finally that flaw at the end is what does him in, right?
So, he's classic, tragic figure.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And we're gonna look at exactly like what is significant about how he dies. So, one thing I want to address, that we've talked about this before, is how all cauldron capes have incredible trauma, right? I can't think of any that don't. We don't see legends. Fair enough. We don't know.
But is there an
what
implication
his thing is.
that the ones that take the like cauldron capes, like they even if they don't experience it, they still have their like whatever that they went through? Yes.
Yeah, all of them had like a near-death experience, or like all of them were desperate enough to take a vial that could turn them into a monster or kill them, right?
Yeah.
Alexandria, obviously traumatized. Eidolon here, obviously traumatized. All the Case 53s are traumatized post, at the very least, if not before. So the idea that they don't have a trigger event doesn't mean that they aren't
sort
traumatized.
Of like, is it? I suppose it's like a prerequisite, perhaps.
Yeah. So one thing, a lot of the stuff I'm talking about this episode, I was talking with a friend named Elliot, and she helped me with come up with a lot of this. Not Elliot from Deep Impact, sorry. But something that we talked about was how almost everyone in Worm is traumatized, like not just people with powers. And I think that's actually pretty reflective of reality, where like everyone's had something fucked up happen at some point. Like Pago, yes. Danny, yes. Sierra, yes. Charlotte, yes. Basically everyone in Brockton Bay, to be honest. The only people that like, I can think of,
even if there's not individual trauma, then there's still like collective trauma of like community or societal.
I mean, hell, they have a 9/11 every 3 months. Like,
yeah, and then even in the aftermath, like everyone has to sort of like live with this, this like enormous loss of their previous ways of life. Yeah.
Just to name a couple others, I don't know if Glenn had something. I'm sure he did, but I don't know what. But Kaye, he has like this big scar on his face. I'm sure that was something.
Yeah.
And there's really not that many more non-parahuman characters, but I mean, Emma, come on, like everyone.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's a tangent. So
a good tangent, I think.
Yes. So to get into Eidolon, right? So when we see him, he is getting talked to by Dr. Mother and Contessa, getting talked into taking a vial. We get revealed that he's disabled and kind of like ashamed of it, and ashamed that the whole town sort of shames him for it, or makes him or pities him really strongly.
Yeah.
And he tried to join the army, and they wouldn't accept him. And he tried to kill himself afterwards, right? And so we sort of get the understanding of like, okay, he really cares a lot about being useful, and on some level, appealing to masculine ideals of strength. I'm pretty sure there's stuff about his father, right? Not wanting to disappoint his father, and wanting to be like a good soldier. These are all very like masculine ideals, and at the state that he was in before, he felt that he couldn't achieve those, and therefore his life was not worth anything. So then he gets superpowers, and not only does he get superpowers, he gets the most powerful power ever, right? And okay, so his disability is removed, right? And he's given much more power than anyone else on the world. He's the second most powerful being on the planet, right? The most powerful human, minus the Endbringers. And yet we don't ever see him satisfied with that at all. He probably was at the very, very beginning, but even then, though, I bet he was like frustrated that he couldn't pick his power, right? But every time afterwards, he only ever talks about how he's losing his power. He's losing his power. He's not strong as he used to be. Remember how strong he used to be? He's not that strong anymore, and he can't do it. And it's an unearned power, right? And I think one significant thing is that I think he's bad at it. He's not good at his power, right? Like, I mean, he's better than someone else who just like started, right? But he didn't really innovate. He's good at like figuring them out on the go, right? But he's not. I mean, he's fought for a very long time, right? So he's at least somewhat tenacious, at least somewhat like smart enough to like be quick. But how much of his strength is just his power, and how much of it is actually his strength?
Yeah.
Like, I think it's almost entirely his power. I think almost anyone with his power would be almost as successful as him, right? So when he gets weaker... go ahead.
Like, he has such, like... I feel like even after, he has such this internalized, like, sense of shame about, like, how he acquired it and how he, like... It is the answer to what he was looking for, but even if it's the answer that he was asking for, it wasn't necessarily one that he needed.
Yes.
So he's sort of like those pieces of himself that he was, unable to like, sort of sort through and process. He still hasn't, right? Now he's just kind of like, he's placed a Band-Aid on it, basically.
100%. I think that's his entire, I think that's his problem, is that he was given a material sort of solution, but his problem... But obviously, having a disability is a huge problem. But his real problem was the sense of shame and inability to be okay with his circumstances, right?
Yeah.
When he gets weaker over time, he's still the most powerful person ever, right? But he doesn't have access to his super uber powerful ones, right? But he doesn't like try to practice with them. He doesn't, it's not until Classic Wenye tells him how to drain other shards, right? Basically. Or how to get to that power that he does. And so he's only preoccupied with like the ultimate strength, which is already unreachable. It's unreachable for the moment that he got the power. It doesn't actually solve at all his issue. So going back a bit, when I was first reading his interlude, or this time around anyway, I was struck by like how whiny he is. The entire time, it's a constant refrain about how he's not strong enough, how he used to be stronger, he's so weak now. There's one part where, like, I think it's post the Echidna incident, and they're all of Cauldron is kind of talking about what to do in the aftermath, the political fallout, how Alexandria is going to have to step down.
Isn't that when Legend shows up and is like all mad, and all of them are mad, and like it's this whole thing.
Yes. Legend's like, so you have been experimenting this whole time, right? You made the Case 53s, you turned them into that, right? And so they're all, debating what the hell they're going to do after this. And Eidolon's he just talks about himself. He goes, don't you guys get it? If I was stronger, do you really think that this would have happened, right? And it's like, okay, well, and like, I mean, maybe not, but also like, what does that matter, Eidolon? We don't have a solution available.
He obsesses over this fact, like over this need to like be strong enough to like protect everyone and to like be the hero that everyone is like like anticipating him being, that he has named himself and they have named him. Like,
it's what I do, like is what he says.
Yeah, he lives in this like state of fear of not being who he says he is, And I feel like this particular this like the concept of losing that which makes him, that he has decided that this strength is going to be like the end all be all piece of his identity, like the like keystone or whatever. The possibility of losing that, I think, like, sends him into this sort of like spiral of like, I can't think about anything else besides this.
Yep. Yeah. One thing I think is interesting there about how, like, he doesn't actually... So there's this one part where he sort of throws a tantrum when... I mean, that's a little bit too belittling, but it's kind of what happens when Dr. Mother cuts him off of the boosters, right? Because they are more... They're better used for more experiments rather than boosting him by a couple percentage points. And he gets very upset because, like, this is the one thing that was sort of bringing him back to any sort of power. And he says something like, I've dedicated my life to this. I didn't have romance. I sacrificed my career. All the social stuff is gone because, I wanted to save lives, right? It's like, no, you don't care about saving lives. it's like he doesn't. There's nothing at all in the entire, every time we've seen him that shows that he cares about people's lives.
Yeah.
What he cares about
it's much more about
is
like
being the hero.
Yeah, yeah. And like getting the imagined glory.
Yeah. I think there's been some bits about how he's not happy about not being the top person in the Protectorate either, of the Triumvirate, how Legend and Alexandra maybe get more attention. Yeah. But it's just like, he needs to be the most important person. It's, I guess, as a sort of, he used to be shamed and thought as like the least important person or other things like that. And so now he's doing everything he can to not be that again without addressing the fact that like he never actually was the least important person. He never was. Like some people shamed him for sure, but I think honestly it wasn't as many as he thought it was. Mm-hmm. Like his father for sure, right? But
I mean, not sort of he kind of made it into this whole like entirety instead of it being perhaps concentrated in specific areas, specific individuals. He's sort of like he's created this ultimatum, I think, in his head of like, I have to be the best or I am the worst,
right?
That he can't get out of that mentality.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because that is also sort of, I feel like the tragic flaw of Shadowstalker is that she can't get out of that mentality that she has placed upon herself, like the way that she thinks about the world in that sort of like, predator prey, like, this or that. Like she can't redefine it. And I feel like that's what ultimately leaves her in the end still, harboring that anger. I don't know. It's very interesting because so many of the ones later on, like, do, like, the ones that have, kind of this positive narrative arc, are the characters that can identify those pieces of their thinking and, like, leave themselves, like, open to like, redefinition, or, like, reconsideration, I think, of the way that they, process the world. But, yeah, it's interesting that the tragic figures get kind of stuck in their mindsets.
Yeah, they're still at the moment before they got their powers. They haven't progressed really beyond that. It's just slightly changed form, but yeah. One other thing is how like entitled his idea of power is. Like it's not an earned power. He's not like, oh, I need to practice to become the strongest again. I need to seek out the best, parahuman to unlock this. He's just like, I mean, to be a little bit more afraid of him, he tries to seek out, bigger challenges, right? But like, it's only so he can feel stronger. It's not like so he can actually like he wants to be stronger, but not better, And I think that's also exactly like a super, toxic masculinity thing, which is like this idea of like being strong and everything should be easy or should like be natural.
Yeah.
Where it's like, and if you're not that, then it's a failure. Like it's something wrong with you, not something to either try to change or to accept.
Yeah, to like examine and think about.
Yeah.
So I can definitely see that.
The last thing, of course, let's look at his death, right? So what happens is he's winning, right? He's just found out how to drain shards, and now he's had access to powers that he didn't have access to for a very long time, and he's working with Lastic Wenye, and it's a really good hard fight, right? And he feels finally a little bit on top of the world. He lives for this, right? And then Sion is there. He turns around and uses Path to Victory to tell him you needed worthy opponents. And so first, he gets the implication of what that means. And then second, he understands he has Contessa's power. And then he lets himself die.
Yeah.
So, one, I'm sure the emotional impact of, all those people's deaths is my fault, did do something, right? But I really think that the thing that did him in is the fact that he has Contessa's power, right?
Yeah.
Now, this is a little bit of a grandfather paradox where, like, if he didn't give in because of hearing those words, then Sion would have said something else, right? But the fact that those words did work on him, right? So the reason that he gives in it's because it feels hopeless to win, right? It's like, this is the move that was going to kill me. And if it wasn't this, it would have been something else. I was going to lose no matter what.
Yeah, yeah.
And Eidolon just seems like he can't understand the feeling of like still fighting even if you can't win.
Yeah. Yeah, he doesn't understand the whole, like, the concept of like holding out.
Yeah, like, even though it's a pointless
surviving.
fight, even though you are losing, even though you are the weaker person, even though, like, eventually it would all be for naught, to still struggle.
Yeah, I don't know, that seems like quite a troublesome, like, conundrum.
Yeah.
Because there's so many fights that seem like you can't win them, you know? And your opponent will tell you that you can't win them. And, like, the only reason that you will is if you continue fighting, you know?
Yeah.
And sort of, I don't know, it seems so limiting.
Or at least make things better, right? Like,
yeah. What are those wicked problems? Have you heard that term before?
No.
I think it's an engineering term. But it's about like problems that have like there isn't one solution, and there isn't, you know, the best solution. There's just some solutions to make it work for a while you think of more solutions.
What's the word?
Wicked problem?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard it, but that makes sense.
Yeah. I don't know if I defined it exactly correctly, because this is just like me recounting dinner conversation, but yeah. Like there's a lot of things that don't have a perfect end, or like there is, or that'll just be continuous, or like continual, I guess. Yeah.
I think about this a lot. For a related term, I have I think a lot about like little tragedies, about things that you can't change and are like not terrible, but like make the world slightly worse or unhappy. Yeah. Anyway, so that's my final thing about how, if you know, I think a stronger, like mentally stronger, a less flawed person would have kept fighting for the sake of everyone else. I mean, Scion would still have killed them, but in some other way.
Do you think whoever was meant to receive Eidolon's shard would have? Like, do you think because he took this unearned power, do you think that was one of the reasons why he was sort of stuck like this?
That's a great question.
Because it wasn't necessarily meant for him.
I wonder who would have gotten it. I mean, probably almost no one in the story, but like...
Yeah, somebody way far off.
Yeah. It's too bad we didn't see it in Eden's interlude, but...
Yeah, that could be interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I was thinking about that, about all of the, like, Cauldron capes, of, like, what would have happened if, instead of Cauldron sort of, you know, deciding by themselves who should receive it. Actually, I suppose it would have gone bad, right? Because then, if they had gone all to the right people, would the plan of planet consumption have carried out the way that it's supposed to have?
If Eden is around, yes. If Eden is still dead, but somehow everyone still got the shards, I think the world would be a terrible place, because that's like double the amount of parahumans. But but no, I don't think it would have. I think it would have ended in the same sort of confrontation with Scion. Yeah. So that's what I have on Eidolon. If anyone has any comments or anything, let us know.
Yes, share with us. What do you think?
Favorite moments before we move into the essays. So favorite moments that we haven't already talked about in this last section. Although if we have any others from just the book at large, I guess we could also mention those. It's kind of hard to call back.
A lot. That's a lot to remember.
Yeah, it's a lot to remember. Yeah, a lot to go through.
Yeah, man. Yeah, and I feel like a lot of them are like tiny detail ones that I was like, I'm gonna stick this on a sticky note so I don't forget it. Yeah, that's what my 3 are. So my first one is that moment when Taylor is like gone out into like the like battlefield after she's like become Capri, and when she first encounters like Imp and Rachel, and Imp sort of tries to speak to her, and then Taylor doesn't really respond quite anything at all, like coherently or anything, and then Imp just kind of is like and because I think Taylor says there's just this sort of like mutual non-communication, and it's sort of like a secondary element to like the like Rachel Capri interaction that happens, but like I don't know, it just seemed like a really interesting and apt depiction of Imp's sort of like middle ground responses between like Tattletale and Rachel to Taylor in general.
Yeah, I can definitely see that about.
It was a very small moment, but I liked it.
Yeah. It's not. She stays, mostly verbal, but she does communicate on a lower level than Tattletale does.
Mm-hmm.
One of mine was Taylor's scream at Dragon, or more specifically, just her general like motherly feelings, or you know what I mean, daughterly feelings, I guess. Wanting to hug this big piece of metal,
and
then
such
sort of like
inexplicable want.
Yeah, it was so sad.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, knowing that she's a bot, but still, yeah.
Yeah, because that like I don't know, the like comfort tone of maternal embrace is like it's so very far from like a metallic being.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that whole sequence I think was really like emotional.
Oh yeah. I mean, she ends up just screaming after. Yeah.
Yeah. What's another one? I liked. I don't remember when this particularly occurs, but I really like when the conversation of like Taylor and Tattletale is happening when they're like looking down at the Earthgimel settlement, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if they're talking about humanity, I think, where Taylor's sort of like surprised that Tattletale is so like willing to fight for them or something. I don't know. It was a peculiar moment of conversation between them two. And I don't remember if they actually, I don't remember if what I wrote down was like actually what they said or if I was just thinking that. But I wrote down about the notion that humanity like clings to itself like a string. In this particular moment, that was the vision that I had, but I don't know if that was like in the text or not. But it seemed like a really nice sentiment, and particularly, accurate for these little pieces of humanity that's like been broken up and they're all sort of like clustered. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But it was a good image. It's not necessarily a moment, so I suppose. It's more of like a
Yeah. Well,
visual.
I mean, that counts.
Yeah.
So another one for me was both of the moments with Dinah, particularly the one where she pulls out Dinah at the height of being Khepri and turns her around and just staring at her with like, controlled eyes. In that flashback, you're there, but you're different. Oh, it's so... Yeah. It's a very cinematic moment to me.
Yeah, I feel like that's one of the ones that we've been waiting for,
Mm-hmm.
But like there's always
something that we didn't know that we were waiting for, but we were. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I feel like there's always like things at the end that you've been waiting for because you know that maybe something will happen and it'll like tie in at the end because it can't be the thing that happens in the middle. And I feel like that was one of the moments.
Yeah. One other little one is something that I just know that we didn't mention was when she takes control of Alexandria, right? She says something like, controlling the manipulative bitch Alexandria. It's like completely... And then Alexandria gets broken to pieces afterwards. I mean, it's Pretender, but still.
Yeah.
But it's totally... When was Alexandria manipulative? Like, not really. Like, she lied a bit.
What?
I mean, I guess...
What? When was she manipulative?
Look,
that whole sequence before she died.
I just wouldn't classify that as manipulation. Manipulation seems so much more like personal and individual to me.
It is. She convinced Taylor that she killed one of her friends.
But this manipulation is like...
That's manipulative.
Okay, look,
and that she's like going off and she's like,
Jack is a manipulator.
Her.
Jack is a manipulator. Okay.
Jack is a long-term manipulator.
Alexandria
is like short little.
She's like
she's been lying to like everybody.
Okay, well, it's not the same though. It's so much more blunt. It's so much more like she's not like subtly changing every one of her words to like get you to slightly feel a different way. No, it's a whole show. She's like conning you, not manipulating.
But that is manipulation.
No, but
it's
like
more.
Okay,
it's
well,
more. It's not as like refined as Jack's maybe, but like that's still manipulation, I think.
Well, okay. Here's the difference. Okay, it's like if I was trying to like convince my brother to, I don't know, like, I don't fucking know, mow the lawn or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one way to manipulate is like say, oh, dad told you to, and it's a lie. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. And another way is to be like, well, hey, it's actually really sunny out, and you can actually, I know you've been wanting to like work out, and this is actually one way to work out. So it actually would be really, really good for you you to do that. And like doing an enticement like that way. That one seems more like manipulation, or like, oh, I always mow the lawn when it's not the truth. So this time it's your turn, right? And do some like gaslighting that way, okay? That seems manipulation to me. And the other one is just like a lie.
But like she does,
like one is
she does do the like manipulating of, kind of doctoring of the truth of things, or she's like purposely
what I think it is?
Information. And
I think with manipulation, you kind of don't notice that it's manipulation, and that I think it was very obvious what Alexandra was doing. It just was also working. That
she was, but maybe it's just unmastered manipulation.
Send us an email or a comment. Let us know if Clarence is right or if I'm right. Yes. Would you classify Alexandria's actions as specifically manipulative, or would you try to use a different word?
Yes. How do you define
tell me
manipulative?
I'm wrong. Tell Clarence he's wrong. Thank you for your support. We should have a poll. Okay. Do you have another one?
Yes, I do, and this is the best. Because I forgot about it, I think. I don't think I brought it up. If I did, who cares? Because we should talk about it all the time. But it's Panacea's gift of bugs with internal organs. Which is like a nice moment of growth, I think, on her part. First, that she can put the organs in, and that she, like, chose to. Plus, bugs. Very nice. This is the only instance that I actually, like, entertain the concept of bugs. In real life, we do not get along.
That's fair. We have a different vibe in real life. I think I already told you this, but isn't there like a fact of like there's always a spider within 5 feet of you or something? I've been thinking about that a lot recently.
That is horrendous.
I think you said that last time too.
Unsurprising. But spiders are like nice. They eat other bugs.
Yeah, exactly.
Like gnats. Gnats are devilish beings.
I had a very big spider in the backyard. Maybe
large?
half a palm size.
Oh, those are
rather
the best.
large. It was a garden spider, right?
Yeah.
It had a big web, and it was like in a pretty good location in some flowers and stuff. And then it just disappeared one day. The web is still there in the same state it was. The spider is just gone. It's just gone.
Maybe it's like Charlotte.
Wait, has joined a pig?
Yeah, or she like went off on her life or something. I don't know.
Could be.
There's this whole like world. There's this whole like community of spiders that live on the ceiling of the post office. It's great.
Is this a story or
no? This is like for real. There's these with these sort of like a pin or like the top of a pencil eraser type body, and then like really long legs.
Oh,
and there's like
I
don't know, 20 to 30 that live in each little like pocket of the post office, and they're all like on top, and it's like deathly silent, right? Because it's the post office.
What post
and
office
they just kind
is
of
this?
Exist. The one I don't know.
Where?
In College Station. It's like
why are there why don't they clean it out?
Because nobody goes there. That it has that sort of like feel of like an under visited place. Until you go into like the main place where you buy stamps, and then there's like 5 pictures of Daddy Bush, and it's horrendous.
You buy sand?
Stamps.
Oh,
like,
stamps.
That part.
Okay.
But the like post office boxes, those little like catacomb type feel.
Yeah. The cubbies. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where all the spiders live. It's fun. They gossip.
Cool. Oh my god.
You're welcome.
Do you think they read people's mail?
The spiders?
Yeah, for
they're
their gossip.
Like they've got their whole community going on already. Like,
cool. Why are there so many bugs inside the post office that they can like all survive?
I have no idea. Well, it's also because like people are constantly coming in and out, so like the doors open all the time. So there's other bugs that come in, and like the bottom of the doors probably don't have very good like rubber.
But how many bugs could possibly come in every day?
I don't know.
What are they eating when they come inside? Not the spiders, the other bugs.
Who knows? Things that people have on their feet. You know, things in the trash. Food.
I don't understand.
Left on the
insect ecosystems.
Side when you're trying to like.
This is the most distressing thing that we've spoken about in this entire podcast.
Really? Oh, I thought it was just a fun thing that happens on Tuesdays.
Wow. Okay. Okay.
You know,
well, when I head over, you're gonna have to show me
like,
the spider infestation.
Of grocery stores and like, you know, I don't know, or like bats. Mm-hmm. It's like just beings that exist. I like those fuzzy little caterpillars that are probably dangerous.
Yes, probably somewhat. Not that dangerous. They probably just make you itchy. Just to insert my own spider story, I went camping and at one of the bathrooms at the campsite, I took my whole shower, right? And I was naked, as you do when you shower.
As you
right?
do when you're in the shower.
And then I noticed I looked up and there was a like palm-sized spider at one corner of the ceiling, another one that was slightly smaller on another corner. It was a very tall ceiling, but they were very scary looking. And then I looked under a bench that was there, and they were not black widows, but they were that shape, you know, the big like bulb shape.
Yeah.
And there was like 4 of them. Each of them was like bigger than like thumb shape, and there was a bunch of egg sacs, and they were all like twitching and like almost like dancing on top of the egg sacs. It was
how exciting.
Horrifying. If you would like to see these things, if you go on my Twitter, which is @podmatias, and scroll down far enough, you can find 3 videos I took of them.
Wow.
They're very big,
exciting.
and they were very distressing. Yes.
I feel like little egg sacs are such exciting things to find. You know?
There was a lot. There was a lot of them.
Man, it's like new life.
And I was naked in their presence. It was very... I felt very
That
vulnerable.
is frightening. That does sound quite distressing. I'm glad you survived.
Thank you. Okay. The last thing I just want to mention.
You have other moments?
It was it was just Rachel with the boulder, the memorial to Taylor, and specifically that moment where she bumps her head against it. It's just very. I felt for her a lot there.
Yeah. I feel like she's one of the ones that we like feel actively memorializing a lot, like throughout. Because some of the other ones, it's like more like pointed or in a particular moment, but like I feel like she sort of like carries those that she has lost all of the time, you know?
Yeah. Like,
and you can like feel it.
Yeah. Same thing with her dogs too. Yeah.
Yeah. Rachel.
Okay.
Cool.
Let's get into your essay.
Okay. So my essay is generally about words and actions and motives, and more specifically about like the violence of the body existing as sort of beneath, but then also in tandem with that of the word and like of the mind, which sounds super abstract, and it kind of is, but we're going to kind of wander around in that concept.
Sounds
that
good.
Like the violence of words is sort of like overarching, whereas like the violence of the body either is because of or sort of like exists alongside the communicated language.
Okay.
So I have 2 individuals. I was going to just do Kenneth Burke, but then I got thinking about Foucault, and it's hard to stop thinking about Foucault when I start. But so before we get into any of that, I want to talk about Burke, but it's only really a small moment because the concept that I'm pulling from him is this idea of like a militaristic ingredient that's like embedded or sort of underlined in language, in our language currently. And it's not really a quote that you'll see in like a published book because it's from an earlier draft of a book proposal of the word words, which he didn't actually publish in his lifetime, but he wrote as a follow-up to The Rhetoric of Motives, and only recently was published by Dr. Jensen, who was one of my rhetoric professors. But
whoa, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so it's like super like embedded in the like beginning stages of that book. But he was writing kind of post World War II after America like dropped the bombs, right? So he's kind of like in the wake of this new reality of like how far we are willing to go, individuals are willing to go, and how much people are willing to sacrifice other people's lives without. And anyways, so he was sort of like writing in that historical space, if that kind of gives you context. So we're going to hold on to that concept of like violence sort of like embedded or kind of couched within language. And then as we kind of keep that in mind, there's this concept that Foucault came up with about how motive, like crimes motive, kind of gets like, is sort of like writ into an individual, like it's sort of like grafted on to make it into like into something more like articulated, I guess. Even if
Can you elaborate on that?
Even if the motive isn't necessarily the like true motive of an individual, there's like the way that like confessional type situations are set up, that the motivation behind an act, and in this particular sense is like a criminal act, but I feel like it could be applied to like other concepts as well, is that whatever motive has been articulated is influenced by the situation in which it's being articulated, like in which it's being spoken.
Okay.
So it sort of like feeds into it of like whoever is like, kind of listening and asking for this confession, this explanation for whatever action it was, influences like what the individual will say, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And then by influencing it, whoever says that kind of internalizes what they've said and thinks that whatever they have said is the motive, even if it's not. From the beginning. I feel like that got a bit circular.
It did a little bit. So please correct me as I walk back through it. So
okay.
When we're talking about motives for actions, right? And he's talking about motives for criminal acts, but this could be for anything. The motive like actually becomes sort of context dependent on whenever it's being spoken about, without it actually being reflective of like the actual motive of the time.
Yeah, like where it sort of takes on elements based on the circumstance in which it was spoken. Yeah.
Okay. Can you give an example?
I feel like this makes more sense too if you think about it in terms of like confession, of like religious confession or something of the like, where it's like the person who is asking you to confess has like a list of things for you to confess, right? And that like has a list of reasons why you would do those things and feel those things. And when you say you have done those things, they will tell you like, this is what you are, or like, this is what you have done, and this is why you think that. But then it may not be like explicit. It may just be like internalized. Like the concept of like shame versus guilt that we kind of, I feel like we talked about previously, of like,
I think so.
Shame being something that has been grafted onto an individual versus guilt as like a singular emotion. Yeah. Does that make a little slightly more sense?
I think so. Yeah. Of how is it sort of related to how like when you do an action, there's actually many motivations. There's not any like single thing, and so whoever you are speaking to are going to draw out different aspects and color them in different ways.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And interpret your own feelings in different forms as well, as in like.
But it's also like
the guilt version.
Like in that act of telling them, like before you may not have articulated it to yourself all these different reasons that you did something, but then like by speaking it to this person, like you are also like acknowledging that this is the reason that you have done it, and it tints the way that you talk about it after. Okay, yeah, like it changes your, as you speak about it, it changes your interpretation of your own sort of memory. Yes, yeah. I think I explained that correctly. Okay. But keep in mind, that's also just like how I interpret it and try to explain it. It's very complicated and I don't understand it fully, but that's worth sort of like keeping in mind. But then I also wanted to bring up this concept of like physicality as a reflection and like sort of a space of like a demonstration of more like abstract concepts. Where like this is a quote where we are not entering in an age in which the flesh is reduced to silence, but rather one in which the flesh appears as the correlate of a system or mechanism of power that comprises an exhaustive discursiveness and a surrounding silence installed around this obligatory and permanent confession. So from what I want to pull from that is that like the reflection of action and of thought and like larger concepts like reflected upon and like embedded within like physicality of like the body.
Okay.
But in this in terms of like how I'm going to talk about it in Worm is like physical fighting and like physical violence versus like forms of like communication and language and like all of that and like psychological I mean like taunting, but like psychological sort of fighting.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you see the connection there, or should I explain it better?
I think explaining it a little bit further would help. Yes.
Okay, so like there's what I was talking about before about like how like the violence of like words and like actions and like the mind sort of exist above the violence of the body. The way that I'm sort of reading that concept of like the flesh is like reflective of more like abstract concepts is the violence of the body is sort of like a permutation, I guess you could say, of like more like abstract, violence that is spoken and articulated.
So that
like
the physical action is always less complex and nuanced than the like internal and verbal
than like the
sort
intent.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay.
Like there's more weight to the intent than like the and I was kind of equating this concept of motive and intent to like there's more weight to that aspect of violence versus like the physicality
what actually
of it.
Happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In terms of being like a tool of spurring someone to action or reaction.
As in like what you do in response.
Yeah. Which is why I was like thinking that this concept sort of gets it appears a lot in Worm, is that concept of like the intent being heavier than the physicality, and a lot of like the large confrontational moments that becomes like the weightier aspect of them, where like the physical fighting becomes like a byproduct of it almost
of the intents and stuff.
Where like in these moments of like individuals like speaking back and forth with each other or like taunting or like that sort of some sort of communication, like verbal or I mean later on it's more like visual, but like some level of higher communication make like the physical fighting intelligible, right? It makes it all the actions are like suddenly grounded and connected to like an underlying emotion and some underlying calculation
right,
that wouldn't have existed if there wasn't that interaction.
Right. Otherwise, it would just kind of be just animals fighting.
Yeah.
Or just forces of nature, even.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sort of like imposes this, even if it's like cruel and even if it's, horrible, it's this like human like categorization, I guess, upon it. Or like, because I don't want to say humanity, because I feel like humanity is like muddled in that definitional sense. Because it can sometimes just be implied to be like the goodness of humanity. But I feel like that weighted intent kind of marks it as like like there's sentience. Yeah. Okay, so I have quite a few like sections that I wanted to like pull specifically from.
Okay.
So that we can sort of see. But some of the like earlier ones with like Bakura, where she has like her bombs and she has all of her like large plan, but it's almost a necessary step for her to like monologue about it and to like inscribe intention onto the actions instead of them just being like even if they are seemingly random or like seemingly just for the intent and purpose of creating terror or like establishing rule, like there's still like, intention, right? There's still motive to them. And they take on that motive in a much more like legible way when she articulates it to the
right, when she speaks about
undersiders. Yeah. And then I guess even almost a little bit earlier with like the encounter at the bank with Panacea and Amy and Tattletale and Taylor. This is like one of the first interactions that Taylor has had, like that's confrontational on like a multi-individual scale.
Right.
And immediately like in the midst of this sort of like stagnated physical action where Taylor has like her knife up against Panacea's neck and Panacea's like making all of these like large horrible threats of and then that are like promising action and promising intent. That becomes even more so like the back and forth of a fight that physicality like can't like hold up to, I guess. Does that make sense? Where like there's even more of like that back and forth, and like you get to know them more through their like physical threats and what they're willing to offer than just their like physical fighting. Because that's in the moment where we have Tattletale sort of
right, and Tattletale's like the epitome of words as weapons.
Yeah. Where like the concept of information sharing and sort of
as a negative thing.
Yeah, and as a negative thing is this ability to uncover the truth is met with this promise, or not promise, like a threat of violence to distract from it. Because immediately after, Tattletale's like, "Oh, I have all this information." Panacea's back at her like threat offering. Yeah, and then the concept of like threats as the means to like spur action also there's a lot of moments that are like in between two that I feel like we've traced with Taylor, that we see her kind of have this like huge flashback at the end of Spec, I think, about where she's like thinking about, she's like, I'm a monster, because she like sits and like thinks through all these different moments of like hand or knee or like the bullet ants and like the like necrotizing flesh and all of this, and like she like goes through all of these moments where she has used violence as a means to spur individuals to action, or the threat of violence. Although there isn't a lot of like her threatening, because she kind of follows through a lot.
Yeah. She doesn't do a lot of bluffing.
But yeah, so even if it's just like beyond threats, it's like demonstrative violence, right? It's still like to achieve an end. There's never really any like violence for violence sake. Where like there's always, and then because there isn't any violence for violence sake, she's always sort of attaching it to this like or kind of wrapping it in like the instructions of whatever she expects to happen.
Well, I wonder though, because some of it I think she has kind of done some violence for violence's sake. She just doesn't recognize it as that.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. We don't really,
well, like in the sense of like, every single act of violence that she's done has had like a reason, but some of them were like primarily like the fact that she was doing violence was because she wanted to. Like I'm like thinking of like beating up Rachel at the first moment.
Yeah. So
it wasn't like if I beat her into submission, then everything will be cool. It was a fuck you for hurting me. I'm gonna make it so you never hurt me again, and I'm gonna kind of take my revenge, sort of.
Yeah, it's sort of like I feel like it's like the expected like aftermath of like emotions that she like, because she has all these like rationalizations for whatever she's doing. We don't see her like pick apart her emotions very often. I feel like that's one of her sort of avenues, is demonstrative violence.
Yeah. But
yeah, I don't know. It's also she implements it as like a supplement to her encouragements, in terms of like spurring others to action, or when she's like deliberately omitting details, she's almost like sort of willing that to occur. Yeah. And then so later on we see it in a few other like confrontational moments, like with Panacea and Jack and Taylor at Arcadia High, where she like she engages with Jack almost immediately when she like kind of figures out the situation and kind of listens to him make his whole pitch to Panacea. She like has this whole physical confrontation with him and then turns around and has almost the exact conversation with Panacea that he had. But she just weaponizes her Panacea's guilt differently. Mm-hmm. But both are like kind of proposing this like unraveling of her mind, right? They're kind of working their way around to initiate violence or action, and they both kind of like lean into the concept of weaponizing like her fear of herself. And which leads to the end of the Nine's arcs, like their whole little section. But there's always this like precipitative, I don't know if that's the right end to that word, but like this like prelude to violence is so very often accompanied by a nice little like speech or words, like with Coil at the very end. Like the whole time with Coil is like there's all these interactions that are this everything that they like every time they interact there is that underlying like hint of violence of like if you don't comply with whatever my plan is, then like there will be repercussions, and almost on both sides. But in the end there's this whole monologuing explanation that leads to the end, and then he's so very sure that she's not a killer, but there had been this whole like arc by arc where we see her sort of like setting herself up to have that ability, sort of preparing herself to be one. I said that was sort of like this like reverse back. He sort of like reversed his threat back onto himself, like the pirouette of like a string ballerina, like being tugged in the other direction. But yeah, it's all these like ending moments that the violence would not have been enough by itself to like justify the action. There has to be like all this talking around it and like preceding it, you know?
Yeah. And it entirely differently colors the feeling and aftermath of the action. Like with Coil, you can imagine if it was a sort of self-defense kill on the part of Taylor, if he got up and like attacked her, which he probably did in one of his other universes, and she killed him then it would have a different impact on her entirely. Yeah, there's very different like the entire meaning of the action can be changed based on the way that they kind of couch it in their explanations, which I feel like that's what we see with Noelle, where like at the very end they have to Taylor and Tattletale like very deliberately omit details of what Clockblocker is going to do and what Sundancer is going to do, and they have this whole conversation where they sort of talk her around and distance her from the action of like killing her friend, in the way that they sort of lace their assurances of this like with encouragement to like engage in this action again, where they all sort of have to like talk themselves up into it, because Noelle is Noelle, right? There's this, detachment from her body where it's like the motive of her actions are like discrete from her own wishes and like her mind. So it's like they're almost literally grafted onto her, more so than some others, which I thought was a really interesting visual, because with her I feel like it's even more like visually apparent. This sort of like concept of actions being dictated by a very specific motive that could be hers, but it could be others. So then like there's this like even with the like physical violence, there's all this like taunting that occurs, but it's like they're not really taunting Noelle, because there's this separation of her mind as it sort of like unravels an echidna. So like they are taunting Noelle's emotions, but not like her intellectually at all. Like just her attention, essentially.
Yeah, it's sort of like the process of talking in like Spur's action sort of begins to like fall apart with her as she sort of starts to fall apart. So then they find like someone else to sort of talk the way around with Sundancer. But so even if it's not her that they're necessarily speaking to in the end, it's still this sort of like physical violence preceded by linguistic. Yeah. And then way later on, we see it again, like with Jack when he's talking. Actually, most of his interactions with Theo do sort of like embody that, where he's kind of sets him up on his path of herodom, and then like every conversation that Jack has is like this calculated conversation, like with Nilbog and Bonesaw over the years and all of that. But and then Scion.
Yeah, I think it's interesting of how Theo, when he's talking to Jack, he's one of the few people that says just stop talking, trying to take away that weapon.
Yeah, he definitely...
And he does disarm him by telling him that his weapon is actually useless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was one of the, like, singular moments. You know, Theo has that... He has that ability that few others have to, like, sort of break through that tendency. Because he does that to Taylor, too, where he's, like... He, like, calls her out, and he's like, we can't... What are you doing? Like, I don't understand why you... like are so, you know, alive at this moment in time, and like, you know, kind of awakened by this high stress situation. He can pick out those particular flaws of individual characters, if that makes sense. I don't know. He's sort of an aside, but he's I think it's because he's so aware of, like, he can like he's able to like step back and like see the emotional side of everything, and like the like larger scale ramifications, I think, rather than like the immediate tactical decision making. But yeah, but some of the later ones that we see in terms of like the very ends of individual characters, with like Eidolon and then also Scion, both of them are spurred to, or they're both their ending notes of their battles are not like physical at all. They're both dictated by words that break them emotionally and psychologically.
Communicative, yeah.
Well, I mean, Scion, it's more of like a visual, but it's still that like psychological like taunting.
Yeah, it's a communication.
Yeah. That sort of like pulls, you know, kind of cuts their strings at the end, I suppose. But with Scion too, he kind of, any action that he takes is spurred by the instructions handed to him, right? First by like from Kevin, and then like the nice lady who kind of inherited that responsibility. That's the guy's name, right? Kevin, was that his name?
Yeah, Kevin Norton.
Yay! And then from Jack too, where he gives his, you know, lamentation. I mean, it's not really lamentation, but he's just kind of, he has his very pointed throwaway lines that you know, spur Scion to his apocalyptic violence. And see, they're not really, neither of the phrases that either Eidolon or Scion receive like have any sort of like immediate explicit draw to like violence, because like you need worthy opponents, or I wish I had better company, but I'll take what I get. Ironic that you're so boring. You know, I bet you think you're noble. You're not. You're uglier than any of us, Sparky. Like, neither of those things are like, you should give up, or, you know, you should go out and, you know, start knocking out continents. But like,
I mean, he does a little bit. He's like, or Jack does. He says,
that's true.
"Why not return to the old ways, the brutish ways?"
Yeah. But there's still like, I don't know, like there isn't this like immediate like demand, I guess. It's more of like, they like set a Rube Goldberg, you know, sort of contraption into motion, I feel like, where it like isn't directly, but like also is directly, but it's not explicitly instructional, but it becomes so. Yeah, I don't know, I guess it's just like all the communication becomes like, even if it's not spoken or anything, it becomes the central guiding force that physicality of like physical fighting is like this sort of like caboose, I guess, or like a sidecar that comes along with it. Because so many of the opponents that they're fighting have like inexhaustible well of renewal, or like have this like resolve that they are unable to beat physically. They have to sort of like find something to break their like rhythm of fighting or like destruction. And it always seems to be like speaking or communication.
I mean, it often is with Taylor's fights too. With Lung, at least the time where she uses the neuter blood caterpillar cockroach. Against Mannequin, certainly a bit. Against Jack a couple times for sure. Not against the Endbringers, but still.
No, but even in the like surrounding bits of the Endbringers, like with Faerie and like her, she does a lot of those, like she gives like, you know, those buck up parahuman speeches. I feel like a couple of times, or she just like takes over and notices that people aren't communicating, and then decides that she's going to, you know, communicate for everyone.
Right.
And then it kind of falls into line where like actions begin taking place and everything becomes organized because there's that communication. So I suppose it's not even necessarily a spurring to action of violence, just, you know, kind of making sense of the like physicality of what they're partaking in. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I don't know if I have any sort of ending bits to it, but it just seems like there's
a lot of examples of communication being paired with or preceding or otherwise being an integral factor in violence.
Yeah. And it's so much so that it's like there is like the violence is like implied when they speak. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like that there's this like thin surface and it's like beneath that waiting. Like when all the thoughts like that a Accord has, where it's like every moment he has that in the back of his mind or on the forefront of his mind, it feels like that is the way that they speak to each other. Is that there is that like potential all the time.
So do you think this is applying also to normal speech in some ways? Or is this...
that we're always like 3 steps away from maybe violence?
Yeah, I don't know if I like that implication.
It's terrifying implication. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe. I hope not.
I mean, certainly with like when the state acts, right? That's for sure. Because with anything that the state asks you to do, it's always with the implication of like, yes, you could resist, but you would not succeed. We will. Institutionally. The power authority means I can make you do it.
Yeah.
Right. At one point or another. I don't know how much that applies to humans now in a society where we don't allow violence, but maybe the fact that we don't allow violence is also wrapped up in violence.
Yeah, see, like, I feel like it's even more so than, like, the immediate, like, expected because it is, you know, seemingly prohibited, but still, like, very present.
Okay.
I feel like that like, underlying violence is like, felt even more, because it's unpredictable, you know? When it's prohibited, it's unpredictable because it's not built into, like, the way that people interact with each other. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense, like there isn't as much like there's not social scripts to like expect violence, you know, like we don't have duels. Mm-hmm. So like the violence is more.
Yeah, have you ever been with a kid when a kid picks up a knife?
Terrifying.
And they just like won't put it down. It's horrible. It's horrifying because you're like, okay, you're either going to hurt yourself or you're going to hurt me. And I can't just like walk over there and take it from you because you're going to hurt me.
Yeah.
But you just don't seem to understand that this is dangerous. Please, for the love of God, put down the knife.
Yeah.
It's horrible. Especially if they get like any emotions at all during it.
Yeah. See, like just the combination of like, you know, emotional flux and like physical violence is just a bad egg waiting to hatch, you know?
Yeah. Wait, did you say a bad pig waiting to hatch?
No, egg.
Oh, okay. I was like, that's a interesting Clarenceism that I wouldn't have expected. Yes. Yeah, so we don't know what to do with that situation at all.
Yeah.
And that makes it all the more
I feel
terrifying.
Like Kenneth Burke suggested the concept of like reevaluating the way that we speak and exist in society. which is good, but very vague. Advice.
Yeah. Did they leave any like directions for that?
I mean, the whole like book is about the concept of war words. But I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't read the entirety of it, so I can't say for sure.
Well, that reminds me of just of how this is another thing I think we've talked about before, but how ingrained patriarchal how much patriarchy has influenced our conception of groups and how they can be formed and led, and how we view all of society naturally as hierarchical when it doesn't necessarily need to be that way. It could be collaborative, with more stuff between equals rather than like we view the natural view of a group is that there must be a leader, right? However, it totally could just be a collaborative team where everyone has an equal say and part. And there's just collaboration. Yeah,
and we've been like taught that it is natural because it has become naturalized in our like social conscious, societal consciousness. Yeah.
I did some research for I was telling a friend that misogyny still exists because they didn't believe me.
Yikes.
And I know, right? And so there was research, of how the mixed of observing all female, all male, and mixed groups, and they found that in the female groups, when it was all women, they all basically spoke all about equally and spoke to the group more often rather than to individuals. While I'm pretty sure in both the all male and the mixed groups, it was individual men that would speak a lot longer than everyone else.
Yeah.
Just not.
Sounds like class. Great. Sounds like history class.
Yeah. I was something that was so disheartening to me is when I would be in my feminism courses, and still, even in there, it was men that spoke the most. It's like, and at the same time, I was, partially, I was guilty as well. But
yeah.
At the very least, I tried to stay silent, and give an appropriate space. But
yeah, I live in like fear of that. It's just like accidentally taking up too much space in a conversation.
Yeah, see, yeah, it's
I feel like horrible... I feel like I have done that previously. Unknowingly.
No. You were socialized to feel that way, but no, not at all.
Yeah.
No. I mean, okay, at the same time, I definitely understand why women feel that way, because, they get punished for speaking too much, because, they will be viewed as speaking too much, but it's totally, arbitrary and unfair and, not actually tied to any... They are not speaking out of turn. Yeah. That's such a ridiculous thing to say. The fact is, that guy, that guy that won't shut up in class is a guy. It's always a guy. So, yeah. Anyway, this is a tangent. But I'm mad about this thing.
It's a reasonable thing to be mad about. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, anything else you wanted to explore on this topic?
I think that's it. I think I covered the majority of what I was thinking.
Okay, let's get on to our interlude bit, where we have a fun game.
Hurrah!
It's called Who's That Parahuman? As a la the Pokemon.
Pokemon.
Did you ever watch the Indigo League Pokemon series, the original?
No.
It's not very good.
Alas.
Well, I guess it's good for kids. Huh?
If it's not very good.
It's good that you didn't watch? Yeah, it's not. It's not very good. Actually, I will be honest, most of the Pokemon movies are not very good. Most of the Pokemon TV media in general. If there's any good Pokemon stuff, I would love to see it. Please send me okay, actually, Detective Pikachu was not bad. But, yeah.
Is it more of like a game that you play with the cards?
Well, it's a video game.
Oh, okay.
If you weren't aware. I'm very surprised that you weren't.
Well, I know about the one where you run around.
Yeah, no, no, not Pokemon Go. The original Pokemon games
are... Oh, that's a video game?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes. They were on Game Boy and DS and all those, all the handheld Nintendo things. Really good. A little bit, they had their flaws, but they were very solid games, and I played them a lot. Anyway, All right, so for this game, right, as you all know, in Spec, in the last 2 chapters particularly, Taylor loses the ability to recognize people, and she just starts calling them by short descriptions, and there's sort of like a quiz aspect to it where a first-time reader might not immediately know who everyone is, but upon a reread, or if you were paying really, really close attention to all the descriptions, you might know who everyone is.
Yes.
And so I went down and I wrote them all down. I actually think I don't know if I missed a lot or if there was just less than I thought.
This seems like a lot.
Well, I mean, you'd be surprised. It's like some of them are repeats, and I don't think it's as many as you'd think.
Okay.
But okay, so I'm going to just say the description. Sometimes it's with a longer piece of text. Sometimes it's a short one. And you tell me which one it is, okay?
Okay.
Which parahuman it is. And maybe we should count them up. I don't have any clickers or anything. All right, anyway, let's get started, all right? Are you ready?
Ready.
The Child Surgeon.
Bonesaw?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Dog Girl.
Rachel.
Tentacle Girl.
I don't know. Tentacle Girl. That seems very nondescript. I don't know. Who is that?
It's Sveta.
Oh, yes, okay.
Okay, so that's one wrong. Okay. I should probably count that too. Okay. Man in gold and black armor. Also a leader.
Man in gold and black armor. Is that one Chevalier? Or no? Okay, yes.
Blonde girl with a phone. She's a friend, and she's with other members of the Undersiders.
Yes, Tattletale.
Yes. Girl who disappears with a gray mask, keeping Taylor company.
Imp. That's such a wonderful thing, too, where she's just, like, walking around with her in New York.
Yes. Portal Man.
Portal Man. That's the door maker. Yes.
Right? Girl with mangled hand and her partner riding a stuffed lizard.
That's Foil and Perian.
Ding ding. A woman covered in a skin of force fields protecting people with massive shards of force field.
This one. I feel like this is someone I should know who it is, but I don't remember.
She also has a big horn.
Big horn. I don't remember the name of this person.
If you can remember like a context in which we did see her, or anything else about her.
Horn. I don't know.
All right. That was Narwhal.
Narwhal. Oh, I don't think I would have been able to recognize her.
Oh, fair enough. She's covered in purple force fields, and it's like skin tight force fields.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
She's like 7 feet tall too. It's crazy. A girl with flying armor and bright yellow hair, who descended and was ready to help the apparently wounded girl when Taylor made her Perian scream. And then she sang.
This is Canary.
Yep. Okay. A woman I recognized from Brockton Bay threw the phone aside, then shot it with a shotgun before changing the gun to something else and opening fire on Scion.
Yes. That's Miss Militia.
Which took the man in gold and black armor a second to get a chance to do the same. Here, one of his underlings, a cape who was named after a siege weapon, took his boss's lead.
A cape who was named after a siege weapon? Who's that?
I will be honest, I don't remember.
Siege weapon. I don't remember who that is.
I don't either. I'm trying to remember his underlings. I know Usher is an underling. Revel was, but she's dead. And I really struggle to remember anymore. But so if you know who that was, please send us a message. Okay. The girl rattled off words, numbers, in response to questions asked by a woman with body armor and a bristling ponytail. Monstrous capes moved to flank her, protecting her. So who are the girl with who's rattling off numbers, and
That's
who
Dinah.
is a woman with body armor? Okay, and a bristling ponytail.
Ponytail.
Monstrous capes moved to flank her.
And capes. Oh,
we can come back to that one in a second.
That's Fault Line.
Yes.
Oh, hurrah.
Okay. A red-haired woman in a black skin-tight outfit turned, aiming her gun at a wall, which then ricochets and hits Narwhal in the stomach. Same group.
Oh, same group. Oh no, I don't remember some of the people in that group. Red hair. I don't know. I don't remember the names of Fault Line's crew.
That was Shamrock, who has powers of luck. And then a fat, bald man stepped forward, blocking my way with his body.
Oh, that's great.
And then a young man with orange skin, a tail, and bright pink hair did the same.
Is that the one, his friend, who's the one? It's like, I don't remember the second half of his name.
His name, it's an amphibian.
An amphibian?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know who that is anymore then.
His name is Neuter. He's a newt.
Oh.
Neuter.
A newt is an amphibian?
I think so, isn't it?
Oh.
Isn't it?
I don't know. I only know it in context of Monty Python. I didn't know it was a real animal.
Yes, it is. It is.
A newt.
Yes, it's a kind of salamander. Yes.
Oh, okay.
And salamanders are amphibians.
Neuter. Yes. Okay.
Okay. The girl is still in the same group. The girl who got more powerful as she lost touch with the world, who could fashion her own realities, then bring them into our world.
That's Labyrinth.
Yep. Who then creates a door and then uses her. Taylor uses her partner to help smash it. Which I don't know if the partner gets any more description, but that's all I found.
Who else is left in Fault Line's crew? I feel like I don't remember all the individual people from Fault Line's crew.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Maybe it might help to remember who helped open portals along with Labyrinth.
Oh.
Because that's what's happening here.
The one who does all the, like, scooping of things. Oh, what is that man's name?
The scooping of things? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yes. Can you remember his name?
It's like the action. It's like Swipe or something. But not Swiper. Or like Scrub. Oh.
Scrub.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go. All right, excellent. The boy who made hands and faces out of surrounding materials. A teammate, a friend. He'd worked on me with something important.
That's Golem.
He worked with me on something important. Yep, Golem.
Yay.
The power booster, to give myself more control, to enhance the song, to enhance that reality warper and everyone else I'd chosen. The power booster.
Power booster. Who does power boosting? I don't remember who is a power booster. Is that someone
Do you remember anywhere where the context might be? I don't expect you to remember the name of this one, but...
I feel like it's somebody from the PRT, or like from the Protectorate. Is it?
Is that your final answer?
That sounds like it's wrong. But I don't remember anyone else. Yeah, I don't know. Who's the power booster?
Okay, I believe that was 2 from the Yangban, or maybe 1. I'm not sure. One or the other. Who their power was split up among the Yangban, and they all boosted each other. But this time, Taylor has just picked them out. Mm-hmm. Okay, the girl who made her dreams into projections.
Her dreams into projections. That's the This is after she's gathered everybody, right? Is that
basically? Yeah.
Is that one of the ones from the Travelers? Is that? It starts with like a G.
Yep.
I don't remember what it is. I feel like there's an E in it.
Related to creation in some sense. Or birth, maybe.
Genesis? Is that her name?
Yep. Along with the boy, her ex-friend, who could turn anything into a bullet.
Her ex-friend who can turn anything into a bullet. Who else is her ex-friend? Is that Trickster? But I thought he
can't turn things into bullets.
Switches things around.
Yeah.
Who turns things into bullets? Did everybody in the Travelers break up? Or, like, did some of them remain friends?
Basically. No. None of them are friends. No. Well, I think Sundancer could be friends with Genesis still. They're real names, but...
What is their other one who wandered off? Cody? Does Cody do that? I don't remember what his power is.
No.
Oh, who else is left?
He was, he had the time travel thing, but no.
Oh, yeah.
Who had the bullets?
Who had the bullets? I don't remember any other person in their group.
Oh,
it's Oliver.
That's so sad. Wow, you can remember Oliver better than Ballistic. Oh my goodness.
Oh, Ballistic, yes.
Okay. Well, that's too bad for Ballistic. He was so forgettable. Wow. Well, okay, not forgettable, but he certainly, yeah.
I know all of these individuals based on the way that their name tastes and sounds. And so it's like the letters in all of their descriptions don't feel the same way as like their names. You know what I mean? Yeah.
So here's a tricky one. The man who could connect things, so the movement of one would move the other. I stepped through and he was ready for me. He moved a short iron rod and the partner rod caught me by the neck, pinning me to a wall, and then Imp disarms him.
Connect things? Who can connect things?
If you can remember the context in which he's appeared before, then I'll give you full credit. I'm not going to count partials.
I feel like I'm really bad at remembering context.
Oh no! You wouldn't remember his name, I don't think.
Someone who can move. Is this one of the ones who was like helping to beat the like time Inbringer?
Yes.
Like one of the like Brazilian or like South American heads of people?
Wasn't South American, but it was present at that battle.
Or like one of the like Tanda, I think. Was it one of them?
Yep. Okay, I'll say that's enough to count for me. Yes, this is Safara, and he's the one that anchored everyone to an object, and anchored everyone to Khonsu as Khonsu teleported around. And Taylor used him to twist everyone through all the portals. Scion was in the midst of fighting a monstrous, hulking dragon man and the warlord with the death-eating shadow.
That's, Lung and, Lord Nog, yes?
Yep.
Yay!
Perfect.
Ha ha ha!
One metal-skinned boy I'd salvaged from the ruins of a recent fight had been molded into a steel-skinned companion.
Had been molded into a steel-skinned companion?
This was to, when she started, mocking, Scion with changers and stuff.
Oh, okay. Yes, that's Weld.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, illusions crafted of smoke. One woman crafts illusion out of smoke, and then a space warper who could mold buildings was making faces.
I don't remember the smoke, but I know that the other one is Vista, yes?
The other one's Vista, that's right.
Who's the one who crafts things out of smoke?
Definitely more obscure.
I don't know that one.
That one was either Nyx or Nyx.
Okay.
Yes, who makes illusions out of smoke. That's right. I think it might also be Nauseous. I'm not sure. I had the girl who made dreams into projections. This is still Genesis. And a clone hybrid of two of the killers capable of making poisonous, noxious illusions out of the landscape.
Poisonous, noxious illusion. Oh,
So you already kind of had half. This is another version of them.
Yes. We had half of them? Of these two?
Yeah, I don't know who the other half would be.
Hybrid of the two killers. It's one of the...
Can you at least... Yeah, go ahead. Just say what you're going to say.
It's 2 of the 9, right?
Yeah,
it's like one of those
so it's a clone hybrid. Yes, okay. I'll give you... That one I will give you half credit on. I don't actually know... Obviously, one half is Nyx. I don't know what the other half is.
Okay.
Okay. The boy with the changing faces.
Boy with the chain. That's Oliver, yes?
That's right. One tinker came through a doorway as if to survey the situation. Heavy armored boots rang as they struck the glassy, blasted disaster area. The man emerged and he cast a glance around. This is after Scion is dead.
And he
points his weapon at one point. That's right. The individual reached the edge of the crowd, a man bearded with a small entourage of people wearing white.
That's Teacher. Yes.
Right. So then Taylor in the aftermath, or Capri at this point, is confronted by 2 women on a dog.
2 women on a dog. Well, one must be Rachel, right?
Yeah.
And then presumably perhaps the other one is Tattletale?
I'll count that as 1. She had a hand extended, something dangled from one hand, a short chain, a black tube with a red button. I'm not gonna... What I want you to identify is what is that tube with a red button.
Tube with a red button? Is that...
This is
one of Bakuda's,
Nope.
latent bombs?
This is Tattletale reaching it out, and offering it to Taylor, but she doesn't recognize it.
Oh, it's her little, spray thing with the eyes and the,
That's right. It's her pepper spray. Yes. Okay, we only have a couple left.
Okay.
A man in blue and white who zigzagged around anything I put up.
Around anything. A man in blue and white. Who zigzags? I don't remember who's in blue and white.
He's also in the air, specifically.
Is that Legend?
Yep. And my next hit was that he did shoot a couple lasers, too. So,
yeah.
Well, actually, I think it specifically just says blasted, not like lasers.
Yeah.
So, a little bit harder than that. This one is... There's barely any more detail of this character than what I'm about to say. A regal woman in blue.
A regal woman in blue. Is that Alexandria?
No.
In context to Legend? Just somebody in
No,
blue?
much more minor. Much like fleeting glimpse.
Walks around in blue. That's regal. Oh, is this Lady Photon?
No.
Oh, because didn't she die? She died earlier.
I think so. Yeah. Or...
Because I feel like Taylor has that thought of Revel and Lady Photon.
Yeah, I think that's right.
I don't know. Who's this regal woman?
Yeah, the regal woman in blue is the woman in blue. the ruler of one planet.
Yeah, the ominous one.
That Taylor spends about 2 minutes taking over.
Yeah.
So it was pretty short one. Okay, only 2 left. No, a little bit more than 2. Okay. A man with flying with great skeletal bat wings, a kind of lace or filigree of bones stretched between segments, rose into the air to intercept me.
This is Marquis.
Yep.
Yeah.
A girl with healing powers that had been placed deliberately next to a living pool of flesh with multiple heads of golden hair.
That's horrifying.
The healer's hands were covering her face, but she didn't step away.
That's Panacea and Victoria. Yes?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, final section. This is right before stepping through the doorway. The clairvoyant, the passenger takes hold of the clairvoyant and shows Capri some images. The autopilot took control of the clairvoyant's focus. It turned my attention to faces. A blonde girl.
That's Telltale.
A girl with brown red hair, yes.
And then Rachel.
The girl with a horn mask that had attacked so ineffectually with a knife.
And that's Imp.
Others. A red-haired girl in another world, shouting to people as she ordered them through a building project.
Oh, is that
a girl
Charlotte?
who was standing... Yes. A girl who was standing outside in the rain in another world, kids peering through the window behind her.
Girl standing outside in the rain in another world. Kids peering through the window behind her.
Well, actually, you were wrong with the first one.
I was wrong with the first one.
But you were close. So let me read it again. A red-haired girl in another world shouting to people as she ordered them through a building project, and then a girl who was standing outside in the rain in another world, kids peering through the window behind her.
Is the first one Sierra and the second one Charlotte?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
All right. And that is the whole game.
Wow.
There was one more, but it was like so obviously the Faerie Queen. It's not even.
Yeah.
So I think there was about 50 total, and you got about 40 of them correct.
I'm surprised.
Yeah, you did pretty good.
I'm glad I could recognize all of those people.
You know, I bet just like almost everyone listening though, having listened to We've Got Worm, and by virtue of that, having like read it and like had a lot of other attention, probably was like yelling the whole time for most of them. But you did a really good job actually, and you only had trouble with the ones that like I expected you to have trouble.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else we want to do for this little interlude here?
Oh no, I made a lot of points, but they're mostly just like me wanting to talk about fancy things, so it's okay.
Okay, everyone at home, ask Clarence about his fancy things, and he will share about them. They do look very fancy.
All right, on to your essay.
That's right. Okay, so my essay bit. So this is kind of cobbled together between a lot of thoughts I've had and an essay I wrote a long time ago, and I'm sort of switching the focus of that essay, which was for a class. But what I want to focus on is names and identity and names and how they identify identity, essentially. Mm-hmm. So, so one thing I find very fascinating that I've been thinking about for a while is how we don't choose our names typically, and how that is so strange. Like it's already strange to me that we don't get to pick our bodies in the first place. I mean, I know that's just reality, but like that's weird that like who we are is something that is decided for us. But besides that, our birth names, we stick with them for our entire lives for the most part. It's like there's obvious exceptions for people, and there's other exceptions like people, you know, change their last name upon marriage or not. But it's a rare thing. It's not the expectation. And it's so strange because when you think of a person, right, and you think of their name, it like fits them, right? Obviously, that's because your conception of the name has been like defined by your relationship to the person. But still, right, there's times where you go up to a person and you're like, oh yeah, you totally are a Steve, right? You totally are a Greg.
Yeah, it's like a
right?
self-fulfilling prophecy sort of thing. Where it's like they have these expectations.
And so, I did some research for this essay originally. There was a study done in Sweden at this one university on elementary school kids and how they identify with their names. It's 300 pages, so if you want to hear that, if you want to read that, skim through it, at me, send me an email, and I'll send you a link. It's actually really interesting, just to skim through. And the same thing for another one, which I was also interested in usernames, because usernames are one of the few names that we do choose. And there's tons of different reasons that people would choose usernames. You know, they could just be jokes. They could just be, you know, whatever the first thing we came up with was. Sometimes they are requests, they're phrases, they are epithets, they are curses, they are references. And I think all of them are used to build an identity in an online space and sort of declare like who you are. And sort of it also, I'm going down a rabbit hole right now, your username affects how you interact with an online space and like how you view yourself in it, right?
Yeah.
So if you have a very offensive name, right, and like if your name is fuck off, right, you're going to be more likely to tell people to fuck off. You're going to be more likely to like allow yourself to be derisive. But if your name was like, you know, hopeful sheep or something,
like
very cute,
sets up
you're a lot more likely.
Expectations of how you would act and how you like what piece of yourself you like kind of display in that moment in that particular community.
Right.
Yeah.
I think in usernames it's more obvious than any other name because like it's the only part of your identity that people see, right?
Yeah.
They see your dialogue and they see your name and maybe your profile picture, but that's it. And the profile picture is like nothing. It's just color. So like if Hopeful Sheep posts a diatribe, you know, about how they hate society and they hate, you know, these particular kind of people or something, people are gonna be like, oh, that's so ironic.
Yeah.
That a person named Hopeful Sheep, and that colors how they talk to this person. And but someone named Fuck Off, if they, even if they're nice, you know, they're probably more likely to be interpreted in a negative way. And these things sort of feed in on themselves, right? If you are if your username is fuck off and people keep interpreting your words as being a dick, you're more likely to be a dick back, etc. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
So this, I think, is just a really more obvious example of how our names both influence how we speak ourselves and influence how other people react to us, which also influences how we view ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And to go back to birth names, all names have meanings, right? And names have other when you meet someone with a name, you're comparing them to everyone else that had that same name or a similar name.
Yeah.
Just because that's the name already has associations.
Yeah, you can't walk up and to meet someone if you like with a completely blank slate ever, because there's always like some sort
impossible.
of attachment to particular names. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like, you know, when I say that though, it's not like the name like Matthew originally meant like a gift of God, right? But like I'm pretty sure that I don't know linguistics. I don't know how literally that is. But
that's taken on,
Like we don't when we meet someone named Matthew, we're not thinking, oh, gift of God, right? It's not like. No, we're thinking of all the other Matthews, right? However, those original Matthews may have been, you know, thought of that way, right? Or, you know, if your name is Bella, right? If you're speaking to English speakers who don't know any Spanish, right? You're just Bella. That's your name, right? But in a Spanish-speaking place, your name is basically just means pretty or beautiful, right?
Yeah.
And that understanding of that name, I think, has sort of, through just cultural osmosis, transferred into how we view people like that or people named Bella, even in the English-speaking world, right? Where I think that name has that connotation at least a little bit, even if it doesn't literally have the connotation or the denotation here. And that study that I was talking about elementary school kids also came up with a lot of the same conclusions, that a lot of kids really do start identifying with their name, even though it's not something they chose, even though it is totally arbitrary and they could change at any point, they do. And I just find that very, very interesting. And I also find it very interesting when people choose to change, right? They either like legally change their name or just declare a name, or they pick a middle name instead, right? That is exercising some sort of control over it, or they favor a nickname over another. I think I read also that people really identify by their nicknames like a lot.
Yeah. I think
more so than their normal names.
Yeah, because there's a level of like intimacy, I think, with a nickname that a name doesn't have, or like a formalized name doesn't have, like the difference between, you know, being called like your full name, or like if your whole family calls you baby or something like that, you know, like there's a level of like familiarity, I think.
Yeah. And I think it's also like more likely to be a little bit more accurate, right? And by having a little bit of accuracy to it, that gives you an anchor even more to hold on to it.
Yeah. I guess because it's kind of like nicknames usually are like after you have popped out and like are a person now. They're like, maybe we should adjust this a bit.
Yeah. When people shorten names, right? Like if your name is Alexander, right? Are you an Alexander, or are you an Alex?
Yeah.
Or are you a Xander, right? Or are you a Lex, right? Like each one of these things is a slightly different flavor of that name.
Yeah.
It's a little bit Okay, maybe I'm mixing up things too much now, but it's a little bit like hailing, where it also depends on the person doing it and how they're identifying you, and you sort of become a slightly different person.
There's because it's like when someone's like speaks you, into like recognition or whatever, right? It's not necessarily that they are like seeing you in your entirety. It's them seeing you as they have conceptualized you. As they like, so if you go visit a friend who you haven't seen in like 5 years, they still have that conception of you from 5 years ago, right? So when they're saying hello, it's like that is the person that they are imagining. And
you might sink back a little bit towards that person.
Yeah.
That's actually, thank you for saying that. The idea that you can't encompass a whole identity is pretty integral to when I'm going to be talking about cape identities
look at
a second.
That.
But to continue a little bit with just some other observations and studies I was looking at, I don't know exactly. Do you know what this approach is called when you like look at just research, social research, and apply it to a text or use it to understand a text better? It seems like it's adjacent to psychoanalysis
I would say because that's what I did with about grief a bit. So I feel like it's like a subsect of psychoanalysis. I feel like I don't know. There's also just like the I don't know. I feel like some literary theory is just like people kind of walking around in like different social sciences and like picking up things to like use. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think so too. So just some more observations from different studies, and I think I'll try to link all these things in the description. So a quote from one, the social attitude that a name triggers and its influence on one's identity may affect the individual's self-perception and development of traits, which eventually may be realized in his or her facial appearance even. So it can go all the way to like your actual facial appearance. Right. If you have a sporty name, right? If your name is Chad, right? You're probably more likely to actually end up doing more athletic things just because like that's what everyone expects you to do.
Yeah, you sort of another one placed on a track.
Or at least nudged along, right? You got little bumpers, maybe.
Yeah.
In one study, suggested that there's a positive relationship between uncommon names and neuroticism.
Interesting.
That one also might have been racist, but we're not entirely sure. So I'll link it and maybe put a little disclaimer on that too, because it's a little old. And they were studying across classes, and so people who are poorer and of different minorities and stuff were probably more likely to be classified as having uncommon names.
Yeah.
And by virtue of being poor, more likely to be neurotic, but it could be possible.
Yeah, I feel like that. I feel like it's confounding.
Yeah.
To associate particular names.
Yeah. But in general, they are typically tied to names. I mean, gender, social class, nationality. They do identify at least some of those things, right? If you identify yourself as with a very, very fancy name, right? Like if your name was like, I don't know, Theodosia or something, right?
Yeah, something.
People will be like, oh,
fancy.
You're rich then. Okay.
Yeah.
You came from a high class.
If you've got like
right?
the designation of like blah 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 the third or like the seventh or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
And of course, nationality, like where is the name from? And of course, gender, like a lot of these things are very easily wrapped up in names. And all of these, of course, influence how people perceive you and what they expect of you, right? And that, in turn, has an impact on internal perception. Here's one thing. My name being Matias, I definitely view myself as more special. That is a consequence of that. Like, I'm not joking. Like, it's unintentional, but I'm like, wow, I've met one other person with my name.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the same either. Clearly, I'm the protagonist. Don't listen to that voice, y'all. It's not good.
Singular being. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like that was always like a thing as like a child is like, I had like a story to tell about my name and like how my mother picked it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just like, here's like from this list. It was like from a specific movie and a specific person, all of this like, it like became like a thing and everyone was like, oh, you have such a pretty name, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, which I feel like dictated my like behavior, I think.
Right.
Based on the response of others.
Right. If you're named after someone and you know it, of course you're going to like react to that one way or another. probably almost certainly try to be more like them, or maybe you're disappointed that you're not like them, or maybe you're going to try to distance yourself.
Although I was named after a horse whisperer, so like I didn't really like.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
it's a high bar,
isn't it? It's so high.
Do you think you can surpass it?
I hope not. I have kind of a fear of horses.
Do you think you can become a horse yeller?
No, I'm frightened of. Like they are a large being, and they're not like cows.
That's true.
You know, I've been thrown off way too many horses.
Okay. I fell off a horse and hit my head once as a kid.
Really?
And that made me who I am today.
Oh. I don't know. See, it's like, you know, one of those like changing moments of your life to get thrown from a horse. Anyway.
All of that said is just basically to say that names are significant and they affect who we are and how other people see us.
Yes.
And are worthy of much analysis, even if like we're not looking at the literal meaning of a name. I mean, you can definitely do that, especially if an author is choosing it. That's almost always intentional. But like, you know, in one sense, I don't think like looking at the deep linguistic meanings of Taylor is gonna, you know, reveal that much, right? However, you know, the fact that it's like a normal name, I think, is significant, right?
Yeah, because I feel like it speaks to like in terms of like the like more common place type name. Because I feel like Taylor's like particularly at that time too, it's like a fairly well used name, I guess you could say.
Sure.
I feel like that like uniqueness and like that you enjoy. I feel like she doesn't necessarily like open herself up to that concept because she's like, there are a lot of Taylors to be around, you know, like what sets her apart from everyone else.
Right.
And then she like becomes parahuman and like she gains that confidence, I feel like, when she like makes herself, you know, unique in her own particular way.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so let's dive into Worm and names. So first I just want to like outline a bunch of places where it is significant, right? My friend Elliot, who helped work on this, she pointed out how almost every single character has at least 2 names, right? I mean, even down to non-capes like Pigot, right? Yeah. She was named Lady and also Director Pigot. And not every single one, right? Danny is still Danny, but still.
Yeah, but it's but like they're known even if they don't have, you know, distinct and discrete separate names, like even just like in different contexts they do don different identities, right? Like Danny is Danny, but then also Dad, right?
Yeah. Yes, yeah, that's true for almost everyone. Yeah. We see how picking names is a pretty significant part of any parahuman. You know, Taylor sort of agonizes over it at the beginning before having it chosen for her. We hear how for the heroes, it's also a big intentional thing, right? Clockblocker having to announce it, right? Because they would use that as a thing to control him.
Yeah.
And that was a sort of declaring of his identity at the time too. Yamada has a conversation about names with everyone in her interlude. Same thing with Valkyrie there at the end. Valkyrie is another, or Glassy is another example, right, of just giving names to people. Another one, more on the title side, but any talk with Nilbog, right, of like, what are you? Are you a king? Are you a queen? What is your role?
Yeah.
Is also significant to him.
Because
more
he can
in a childish
declare
sense,
it.
but yes. Yeah, exactly. There's something you can choose, right? Who are you in this moment, right? And Taylor, intentionally thinks, I'm going to put myself on equal footing, right? Instead of taking the same places as Jack, I'm going to be a queen just like him. So there's a lot of stuff about how names affect us. Taylor spends a lot of time at the end trying to define who Taylor is, right? Picking that name over the others. And at this point, I'm mixing up a little bit names and identity, because where you choose to be one identity, you're also choosing to be one name.
Yeah. Which I feel like it gets kind of like blended when names are used to designate different pieces of their identity.
Right. Yes. Yeah. They're kind of inextricable, and I'm going to end up sort of talking about identity when I'm talking about names. So that's just a consequence. Also, before we fully dive into the final, explanation stuff, I want to look at how just superheroes in general as a genre use names. So, one question I asked when I was first thinking about this, when I was first writing this sort of essay, 2 years ago, when we're talking about secret identities, right? Superman and Clark Kent, Spider-Man and Peter Parker, Batman and Bruce Wayne. which one is the secret identity and which one is the real, right? When I was doing research, it was actually very hard to find any sort of answer on this, which is kind of very strange to me. But I think it obviously depends on interpretation, but I think almost always the more real one is the powered one, the superhero side. It's always them, Superman.
Like, they have something that they need to achieve, and they don't have the means or power to do it as themselves, so they have to become someone else, and that becomes, they like take it on, they like become their secondary self even more so because they have that power.
Yeah, they're not allowed to be their full self because the full self is the one with the superpowers, right? In their human identities. But in their superhero identities, like the only parts of them that they are not able to exemplify are the ones that are like basically social and external by virtue of that. Yeah. Like they can fully be their own personalities. Like it's pretty clear that like Bruce Wayne is an act, while Batman, who punches people in the face, is not.
Yeah.
However, there's ones where it's more 50-50, where like Peter Parker and Spider-Man, I think, are way more in tune than anyone else.
Yeah.
Where I feel like Peter Parker is basically he's basically the real identity, except that sometimes Peter Parker has to dress up and fight crime.
Yeah.
So yeah, I found that interesting, and I think carrying that into Worm, I think that's also very true. I think basically every single cape is more para than human, right?
Do you think it has something to do with like what the particular person needs and is doing when they take on this like superhero persona?
I think, but I would like you to elaborate.
Like, well, in the sense of like Batman or like Spider-Man, Bruce Wayne is like unable to articulate and act out and not process his emotions and grief, right, as himself. And so he has to go out and kind of externalize that onto like the people who are committing crimes in Gotham, right?
Right.
But then like so he feels more himself when he's able to fully express his emotions in the way that he thinks he should, right? But then like Peter Parker, like he's still in a state of like identity flux because he's a teenager, right?
Right.
So this concept of taking on like donning a suit and like going out and like taking care of his neighborhood, it's still, he's not, it's more of just like an adventure to him, right? And he's like looking out for the people that he knows in his neighborhood, right? He's not like I mean, he has the powers, but there isn't like that like a need for him to go out and like it's another option for him to like exist in, another space for him to exist in with and like fully flesh out his powers, but like there's less of that like need to like return to it for a particular purpose over and over, you know? Even, I mean, he is additionally...
Of the Spider-Man identity?
Yeah, like, I mean, he is like solving crimes and like saving people and such, but like that's just because he feels like he has to, like he has that role, you know what I mean? That like...
It's not like a problem he's like internal problem he's trying to he's not Spider-Man because of trauma. He's Spider-Man because like he feels that's the right thing to do, which partially is because of trauma. The great power was great responsibility.
That's true.
But still, I think for the most part it's just because he feels like that's what a good person does.
Yeah.
Batman probably somewhat feels the same way, but I think it's coming from a darker place.
See, because like,
maybe that's just
I feel like
an active
Spider-Man,
interpretation, but
like,
still,
he could be somebody else. Like it's not, there isn't a necessity for him to be Spider-Man, you know? But he's always going to be Peter Parker.
Right.
Whereas like
yes,
Batman,
I think so.
I feel like he would very willingly give up his like pretending to be a person and just be Batman.
yeah, I think so too.
Which I feel like that's
I think
what...
Superman's another angle for that, where Clark Kent is tied to his humanity. It also depends on the interpretation, because sometimes Clark Kent is like just like a nerdy nobody, and other times he's like basically just himself, or a mix. I don't know. Yeah. So okay, but let's get into actual Worm. So we can move on.
Sorry.
Whereas most names that we have are a quote non-negotiated part of our identity, right? Capes usually name themselves, right? And they name themselves with purpose, right? So, capes can name themselves literally anything they want. I mean, it's not always going to stick, right? If your name's a mouthful, they're going to name you something else. If you don't name yourself, as we see in a couple places with Taylor, with Fault Line's crew, you get named for you, right? Yeah. We also know that in this world, knowledge is power, right, in this story. So sometimes the difference between Taylor winning and losing a fight is knowing who she's up against does, right?
Yeah.
So you would think that most capes would intentionally obscure their power or name themselves that has nothing to do with their power, right? But that's not true. They almost all, as a rule, name themselves in some reference to their power because that's the only way that it fits, right? Lung, that means dragon, right? A vista, right? Overall, like big scenes, right? Who are some other Tattletale, right? It's like they put not only their power but their personality into their name, even though like that's not the most tactical decision, right? Because they just can't help it.
Yeah, it's like for the aesthetic.
There's obviously. Yeah, exactly. And it's not like as a rule they always put stuff about their power in there, right? Like Kid Win is, just a name, right? But it does also inform a lot of stuff, right? That he's a kid, right? He does know how to pick a good name. Here's a really good example of like clearly this is, if you think about it, a bad decision. Regent, right? His power, he's hiding his body control power, his full body control power, right? But his name Regent fits that power far better than the twitching aspect, right? Like his old name Hijack would kind of fit both, right? But Regent?
Yeah.
Why would a Regent make you just like twitch your arm, right? So even though he's handicapping himself to not use his true power, he keeps that aspect of it in his name. And we're told that the parahuman culture discourages names that don't have a direct correlation with powers. Like I think that's during the Leviathan arc.
Yeah.
That's talked about a little bit, where it's or at the very least that like the whole bird thing fell out of fashion at the very least.
Yeah.
Name yourself a whatever falcon. Because like that's just the aesthetic. That's not the power. And so in the end, I think, through the course of the story, capes usually end up thinking of themselves as their cape name first because their civilian identity doesn't consolidate their entire being. It doesn't cover everything because their true self, their like physical self, the self that like perceives the world and how to interact with it, does have the superpowers, right? Skitter has the power to control bugs. Taylor Hebert doesn't until later on when she reclaims it. And so this leads to capes thinking of themselves as parahumans first, second as human. So one interesting example to me is Case 53s, right? Who are constantly in superpowered form, right? Almost none of them, I don't think, the only one in the entire story that I can remember that has more than one name is Sveta.
Yeah.
Originally Garrett, right?
Yeah.
But I think she also chooses Sveta to be like her full name all the time.
And that was really only because she was encouraged to do that.
Yeah. But so neuter is neuter, right? One interesting one is Gregor the Snail. I think is really interesting because he chooses a normal name but keeping the moniker the Snail.
Yeah.
So like an interesting in between to me.
It's very like a medieval like leader.
Yeah.
Gregor the Snail.
Sure. Yeah. Gregor the Snail. Yeah, I can picture it. Yeah. And so one final one that I find very interesting is Weld, right? So Yamada tells him, pick a real name, right? And she's telling everyone to do that in hoping that everyone identifies with a more human name. And that's valid, right? But like Weld is never not a parahuman. And I think that's very clearly why he rejects that. Because he can't turn it off. If he were to, like, he would either just change his name entirely and just have one other name that's more human. That's fair enough, Jessica Yamada. Or he keeps this one, but he would not like choose a civilian name. Yeah. Like because he's never like, not
when,
well.
When would he use that? Like the concept of like parahumans using their civilian names is like when they go to like the grocery store or like are not wearing their costumes, or like there is a like physical tangible shift in their like presentation that he would never really be able to depict.
Right. Like, I mean, he could just, when he puts on a costume, right? Like a suit or whatever.
Particular clothes or something, but.
Yeah. And then that could be his superhero thing. But, like, he would still be identifiable in both cases as the same. It would just be like, okay, while I'm wearing these clothes, call me something else. Yeah. He's not being someone else. So in again, like as a sort of foil, Sveta does choose a more human name, unlike Weld. So they're kind of choosing both sides of being powered and unpowered. Which one part of their identity are they trying to get closer to?
Yeah, but she chooses her name specifically because she doesn't want to identify with her her powered self, so she can like build a like control over herself in a way that's like active.
So to move on, let's finally look at Taylor.
Yes.
Right? She has 4 names over the course of the story.
She does.
Taylor, Skitter, Weaver, Khepri. Only Weaver is the only one that she chooses. Taylor is given to her by her parents. Skitter is given to her by the media and the heroes. Actually, I wish I remembered who exactly it was that called her that.
I feel like it was one of the...
it was one of the wards, I think. Or, I can't remember. She chooses Weaver, but Khepri is also by everyone at large. However, she also, near the end there, starts choosing what Taylor means to her.
Yeah.
Right? She starts calling herself Taylor again. And I think that also counts.
Yeah, because she very deliberately chooses to step away from both of the names that she has previously identified as a parahuman, and now that she's sort of like reclaiming.
Yeah, and trying to sort of feel the entirety of her identity. Like before with Weaver, she chose, right? And she was choosing very particular traits, right? She was choosing pragmatism. Yeah. She was choosing getting the job done, doing the greater good. That's what Weaver is entirely. An emphasis on like tying things together and building rather than anything else.
Yeah.
However, that doesn't. Yeah, there was no Taylor basically. Almost that entire time, she's either Taylor or Skitter. And those are the 2 identities that she's grappling with. Taylor is not a consideration of an identity during her time as Weaver. And it's not until after that identity fails that she chooses another one. It's also, I think, significant that like each of these moments is a turning point. Obviously, Weaver very obviously, but Skitter's like the bank robbery is like the first turning point, right?
Yeah,
where you're like, oh, this is a more interesting story than I thought. And Khepri we don't see until I don't know if anyone calls her Khepri in the story, or if that's just after. It is after, right?
I feel like it's...
I don't remember.
I don't think anyone addresses her as Khepri.
I'm pretty sure that it gets used somewhere.
It does, because it's in that section. But how do we know that it's her that we're referring to?
Nah, I'm pretty sure it's clear. I don't remember, though. Anyway, so it gets chosen for her as well. With Skitter, we're shown that the heroes are choosing it intentionally to make her seem like unintimidating, but not like pathetic, right? She just skitters around. But when she adopts the name, it makes it her own. And by the time the Slaughterhouse 9 leave, Skitter has become like a terrifying persona, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And there's a big emphasis on the creepiness, right? On the skittering, on the crawling, the covered in bugs Taylor, right?
Yeah.
Near the end of the story, Imp is like, hey, you're being your old terrifying self again. Good job. And so she's kind of reclaimed the name and changed the power of it, and but at the same time, it's changed her, right? She becomes not just Skitter, not the supervillain Skitter. She becomes the warlord of Brockton Bay Skitter, right? And that additional epithet, I think, also alters how we feel about her.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to finish up. So after killing Alexandra, she changes to Weaver and trying to be more pragmatic, still violent, but with a hope of with this change of name, she can put back her old identity and build a new one. And she kind of is able to, right? Like she really does become more Weaver than Skitter. At least that's how everyone else feels it, right? Yeah. There's some other important aspects about names here. I
feel like she
Brian
loses the pieces of like herself though when she becomes Weaver. Like she actually decides to shut some things down.
Yeah, I mean she loses friendship. She loses that ability to have friendship. Yeah. And just another section of how names are important. Brian, his line, "You'll always be Skitter to me," right? Not "You'll always be Taylor." It's not "You'll always be Taylor." It's "You will always be Skitter to me," because that was her real identity at the time.
And I feel like he's one of those examples of someone who knows you from the past and has held on to that memory of you. Because to him, she's always going to be the person that he remembers. not necessarily who she becomes.
Right. One little note I think that's significant is that when Taylor puts on her costumes, she never says that she like becomes her other identity.
Yeah.
It's like it's a single consciousness all the way through, right? She's not like, oh, I put on my costume became Skitter, or I put on my costume became Weaver. It's not really until like the very end that she's like, I'm going to be Taylor, and makes decisions off of that.
Yeah. I feel like there's not a lot of people who we see think that way. Like, I know that, like, Theo thinks that way, but, like, a lot of the other ones are just kind of, like, this, like, they don't really examine that shift. Because it can occur, like, I don't remember who answers, like, a telephone call during, like, a therapy session, but someone is, like, they, like, immediately shift.
Foyle.
Yeah, Foyle, where she, like...
Or Lily.
She's having this whole conversation, but immediately she shifts, and it doesn't matter what she's wearing. It's her mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Related to that, I think it's also significant by the end of the story, what are you calling these characters? Yeah. And at different points, what are you calling them, right? If you just read a bunch of chapters where Brian is Brian and there's romance, then he's Brian, right?
Yeah.
And I think for me, he's actually more Brian than Gru for the most part.
Oh, really?
Because, I'm not sure, but like, at least by the end here, it's like Brian is his more vulnerable side, I think, and he's definitely more vulnerable.
I feel like...
but other...
I feel like I think of it the other direction. Is that he wanted Gru to be his more, like, strong and, like, stable side, but that was where he experienced, like, more of his, like, traumatic experiences. Or, like, that's when we see him being more vulnerable.
Sure. In
the moments where he's, like, under high stress or distress, where he, like, has to take himself out of an equation, it's usually when he's Gru. And then when he's Brian, it's like he's trying to like hold up that front. Yeah.
So a couple of things. Some other ones are like Rachel, right? By the end, she's Rachel. She's way more Rachel than she is bitch, right? Tattletale, I think she more leans Tattletale, but she's also closer to 50-50.
I don't know if
Imp is certainly far more than Aisha, I think, because she's like more of a trickster kind of thing, and so she's Imp.
Yeah, I don't know if I have thought... I don't think I thought of Tattletale as Lisa since, like, the first 8 arcs.
Yeah. A while. Yeah. And so on with many others. You know, there's... Vista has the same thing where she's definitely identifies with Vista way more than Missy Byron, right? We talked about that before. One example I forgot to mention earlier about Taylor, right, is when her secret identity is revealed, right?
Oh, yeah.
She could have lost the Skitter identity and just became Taylor the Warlord. She could have. That was a possibility, but no, because she really was Skitter at the time. She was way more Skitter than she was Taylor. And so when that wall broke down, the Skitter side subsumed the Taylor side.
Yeah, she sort of like built this persona and then like embodied it almost after she built it. Yeah. Yeah.
So just to finish off, because we got to take a break real quick. To finish off, the one of the main themes of Worm is how the masks we put on, we become. Yeah. And I think names are a big part of that. And obviously I've branched out a bit more into identities in general, but the idea of like, there's a whole thing of like, something doesn't exist until you name it, right? Yeah. Until there's a name for something to separate it from something else, it does not exist. So these characters placing names on different parts of themselves does separate that part from themselves and does let them think of that part as something else and does let them change because of it. And I think that's fairly significant. And I think that's important in how we view names in our own lives.
We can like...
And not to... Yeah, go ahead.
We can like place particular like distinctions between pieces of our identity, I suppose, of like where we are and who we are with. Yeah.
I think, not to go into details at all, but Ward also has a lot about this, about names and choosing names for yourself. And, not to take it too literally, I don't think this is like a handbook, but, I think it would be significant to, like, if you're trying to change something about yourself, maybe consider finding a name for that different self that you're trying to be. It doesn't have to, like, literally be a new name, but, like, what are you calling this different self? How are you differentiating it from the person that you are now? Okay, that's my speech.
A good speech, I think.
Those were our final essays for Worm. At least unless if we come back or something like that, which is possible,
you never
but
know.
not planned.
I definitely have made a list.
Oh, yes. I mean, there's so much to talk about.
Just like potential things that I want to just think about, you know.
But okay, let's do our final favorite powers from this section. So what were your favorite powers from arcs 27 through end?
Okay, I had two. I had a large scale and a small scale. And the small scale is the teleporter that Taylor encounters on the battlefield. Yeah, where she gets like... It was interesting the way that it was like articulated, of like her power is like this... The way that Taylor understands it is like understanding incomplete things in her like memories, you know, because she like is processing through her own memories, and it's like the bugs. Here they are again, the empty bugs.
Oh, okay.
But it was also just really cool.
Yeah, the void.
To
that's
like
what,
the like drawing of it.
Yeah. So I had a couple. Well, like one, just Glacic Gwenye when she has an Eidolon shade, just felt really cool. And I think Bohu also had Glacic and Eidolon, or at the very least it's possible, which is frightening. In addition to a third face. Just that. How many powers can you get in one person? What if like, Butcher for the last one, maybe?
Butcher.
What happens?
How I miss Cherish.
Endbringer kills Butcher. I think it probably. I think it was something like if Butcher dies of natural causes, it goes to the nearest parahuman. I think.
Oh, and Endbringers are natural.
Yeah, I guess so.
Deaths. I wonder if it would get like diffused like salt.
I hope so. Jeez.
Yeah. Oof. My large scale one that I was very interested in was the observational capacity of the clairvoyant. I would not want to experience that often, but I feel like that would be really, really cool.
To view literally everything at once?
Just to see. Yeah. Also probably dizzying.
A bit. But... I feel like after that, I would suddenly like be very disappointed with my own senses.
Yeah.
So I would not want to touch that poison apple.
Oh, that's true. I feel like I couldn't handle it more than once. Like I get overwhelmed just like in general in life. So I feel like it would be a very overwhelming experience.
So real quick, Sleeper, great power, love that one. Another one, actually Teacher, just like that kind of power definitely does seem like actually seductive. Like you totally would be like, okay, but like I would get just like a little power, just like a little bit, right? Just to try it out. I'll be like a little parahuman just for a little bit, and I'll just help him out, and then I'll go on my merry way. I can resist it,
like a tester stick.
But you can't. You can't. But that's what we do. We talk ourselves into bad things all the time.
Very true. Rationalization.
Oh man, another one. Just how ludicrous Taylor's use of Doormaker was. Like the doors don't move. They don't move.
Yeah.
They don't move. Every step she takes, she closes all of them one by one and reopens them. Every single one. These are holes in reality.
That's so...
I wonder...
that seems like a problem.
Yeah, I wonder if she knew...
Upon further reflection.
If she knew how much energy it was taking and how that Doormaker could run out, if she would have just like done that less.
Yeah. If she was conscious of how much she was using.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't think about it before, but when you mentioned Narwhal, her power was actually very cool. I did not remember before, but it has like, it's just been like percolating all night.
What I love cool. in that final chapter, Taylor like sends bugs in her eyes, right? And instead of like brushing them out of her way or something, she bisects each individual bug with a force field. And it's so extra and it's so unnecessary.
Dedication.
And I'm pretty sure like that's why she gets captured too. Just because she was being so extra. Like she doesn't have to be naked, you know? That's her choice.
It's for the aesthetic.
It is for the aesthetic. It's a good aesthetic. I'll say that much.
True.
Okay, any favorite powers that left over? Any from the entire story that we didn't mention, maybe?
Oh, that's quite a lot.
It is quite a lot to suddenly take in. Honestly, I don't think we talked enough about No-Bog's power. And
yeah, I know. We sort of just mentioned him a bit.
Yeah, I wish we saw a bit more of his just the particulars. Like, okay, he does a lot of creations. I just want to see like his special ones, you know?
Yeah, because I mean, he has some that like his, begotten beget.
Right.
Don't they?
Yeah, they reproduce.
Yeah. So I feel like that whole line of production could be interesting.
Yes.
In terms of like...
And again, Blasto. I miss him
DNA.
so much.
Blasto. I miss Accord. So interesting. Wonderful.
I want to see a buddy cop movie with just them two.
That would be fun.
Okay. All right. So let's get into the final themes and theories. These are some essays that some people sent in. We have two here with Megafire7, who wrote an essay on the fight with Scion and how there is a sort of dichotomy and difference, compare and contrast between the humanity and alienness of Khepri and Scion, right? Where Dr. Mother insisted that abstract alien methods are how you defeat an abstract alien foe. And Taylor was saying that no, it should be the human ways, right? That she wants it to be humans that are able to win the day. And Megafire asserts that they were both right and wrong, where what defeated Scion was an alien method of attack, an alien Khepri, right, which is more shard than human, but attacking the most human part of Scion. And finishing off with saying that the reason that they won is because Khepri, Taylor, in the end, was less human than Scion.
So interesting. That's like, it's very, very interesting kind of, flipping of the roles.
I think it's very well done. And I think that's absolutely correct. And I think is a worthy addition to anyone analyzing specifically like how the ending functions or humanity in Worm or a bunch of different angles regarding that. I think that's a really useful observation.
Yeah. And then I'm very bad at math. Did a short essay on Taylor and sort of her like character identity and her kind of layers of self-concept where it's like they say that Taylor's three people. She is who she is who she thinks she is, and then who she wants to be. So there's sort of this like, all the sort of gaps, I think, between each of those different individuals that she like sees or like is in her mind, I suppose. Where Taylor's, she is furious, and then she thinks she's being reasonable because she does so much rationalizing. And then she wants to be this hero, but doesn't necessarily live up to her aspirations.
Yeah, they point out this particular section when she's talking to Foyle and Parian, right? And being very convincing, like actually being convincing, but also being, covered in bugs at the same time and having, those are a threat. Atlas is a threat right in the room too. And just not recognizing those things. Yeah,
I feel like her definition of hero kind of is... or her definition of hero in terms of herself is like warped from what the like denotative definition would be, I think.
Yeah. I don't think she ever under any circumstance would be a true blue hero. I think that's a bit out of her reach.
But I'm really glad that she didn't become
really
that. Yeah, I don't know. I mean I like her better because she didn't. And that she like kept pieces of herself even when she was like entering into like the wards and like into a role that she had chosen for herself. She wasn't willing to sort of cast off everything that she was before.
Yeah. I think so. I think she probably would have. I mean, she wouldn't have been able to do most of the things that she had to do.
Yeah.
Okay, that is our themes and theories. And of course, if you guys send in essays and themes and stuff, we won't be able to respond to them right away. Obviously, this is the last episode. But I can imagine that some point in the future, we might, return and do some sort of essay or something, and we would definitely address it at that time. So if you're listening to this far in the future, consider still sending in an essay, or at the very least writing it and like posting it on the Discord, or not the Discord. Well, the Discord too, but also the subreddit is what I meant to say. Because people want to hear more Worm content, and honestly, there could be more Worm scholarly stuff out there. I'm pretty sure there's only, the last time I checked, which is earlier this year, I'm pretty sure there is only like 2 academic articles on Worm at this point. There's some interviews.
There are some? What sort of?
I think one was on...
things were they?
Rationalist protagonists, I think.
Okay.
I'm not entirely sure. And another one might have been just on like the concept of web serials. So neither are like specifically on like the content of Worm.
Yeah.
So if you want to be the first, if you're in college, if you're writing a thesis, go for it.
Go do some publishing about it.
I dare you. Okay. So before we actually outro, I want to reflect on Decomposing Worm because Clarence, it's over.
Here it is.
We finished. This is it.
No, so surprising.
It does not.
I mean, I
like
shouldn't
it's
be
over,
surprised.
but...
That's generally what happens. But
yes. Yeah, we're done. So
yeah, feels good though.
It does.
I feel like accomplished.
It does. It's really weird to actually like, be able to package something up and be like, okay, we're done with that.
Yeah.
I mean, Do the Right Thing is going on indefinitely, right? And we're like changing formats and stuff. So it's like that's continuing changing form. That's something that never gets finished. It doesn't have a finish.
Yeah.
It has
there isn't a prescribed finish point.
It has a you aren't making any more point, right?
Yeah.
But this is done. This is the conclusion. And I'm glad to have done it. There's definitely some things we learned. I feel like
yes,
rescheduling, which is that don't. Well, okay, so in perspective, we were in college, and I am right now, and it's also a pandemic time.
That's true.
And
I mean, I'm usually disconnected from time, and it just like became worse.
Yeah. So we do apologize for having so many pushed dates and stuff like that. We're so glad that you guys, and I mean, no one ever complained, so we really appreciate that. That's really kind of you.
Yeah, you were very nice about it.
Yeah. And we did have good reasons every time. Although, of course, each one of those good reasons could have been solved by, like doing stuff ahead of time. But
true.
Yeah. So, I mean, do we want to announce right now? Actually.
Oh yeah, sure.
So. Relevant, we will be applying the lessons learned in our next project, which, as many of you might have guessed or were excited about, Clarence and I, for our next podcast, will be covering Twig. That's right.
Hurrah!
Twig. We'll be covering Twig. Twig is actually one of my favorite, is my favorite Wildbow work entirely. And can you tell me what the name of that podcast is going to be called, Clarence?
It is called Dissecting Twig.
Thank you to DDev, who suggested Dissecting Twig. We're stealing your idea, and you do have credit for coming up with the name, because we did not do it. Thank you, DDev, who's actually the moderator on the Doof Media Discord right now. So that'll be more of a We've Got Worm. Yeah, We've Got Worm sort of analysis, probably closer to arc by arc, probably more half arc by half arc, because it's a bit longer than Worm was.
Yeah.
But we'll see. We might have some reflective episodes, but to address the scheduling thing, because we don't want to have that problem again, what we'll probably do is record some number of episodes ahead of time. Probably not all of them, but some number of them. Maybe like the first 5 arcs, maybe the first 10. I'm not entirely sure yet. But we'll record our analysis of those ahead of time, and we'll release them on a schedule. But we will have like a listener section that will be recorded like live, right? So we'll record the main body of the episode, 6 weeks in advance or whatever it is. And then the week that it comes out, we will read all of your comments and things like that, and then record a response to those and attach that to the first part of the episode, I think. That's the plan right now. Who knows if it'll change, because we won't be doing that right away. We won't be doing that right away.
Yep.
Smooth. But I'm super
Very
excited
nice.
about it.
I'm really looking forward to it.
What do you know about it already?
Mostly because I like my the impression that you have given me is like gothic Mary Shelley Frankenstein-esque, but also like biopunk, which seems. And then I feel like there was another description of a world of bonesaw, except maybe not quite as twisted.
Sure, yeah.
Which all sounds wonderful to me. Because I love Mary Shelley.
Yes.
And anything in that kind of gamut or ballpark. I don't think it's a gamut. That's more of like an array of things, isn't it?
I think so.
In that,
range.
Tack. Yeah, range. That's sort of my extent.
Good. You're in for a treat. It's a good time. I really, really, really like Twig. It's actually for some behind the scenes stuff, we actually I wanted to do Twig way before planning to do Decomposing Worm. Actually, I wanted to do that first. It was already at the time the only Wildbow work not getting covered. This was before Pale when I was planning this out, and I wanted you to do it with me, Clarence. But of course, like, the ticket to enter the Wildbow fandom is at this point anyway, a reading Worm. Everyone has read Worm, with very few exceptions. I'm hoping that Pale changes that, and that maybe Pale becomes a new entry point, because it's, really good, and hopefully it'll be shorter, but we will see. So that's why Decomposing Worm exists,
who knows?
Y'all, is because if Clarence was going to read Worm anyway, we might as well get a podcast out of it, and sort of use this as like a training run leading up to it. And I think we've definitely learned a lot from this that we'll be applying, certainly about script writing and analysis. I'm not entirely sure how we'll keep the whole literary bit, because I do want to apply that, but I have no idea how we should structure that. But we'll figure that out.
Yeah.
But I'm really happy we did this. It's 45 hours of content.
45 hours.
A little, maybe like a tiny bit less.
That's a lot of talking.
It's a lot of talking. Actually, I'm certain it's 45 if we add this podcast into it. And it's actually way more because I cut like 2 hours from every single episode so. Mostly just cutting out the pauses in between how much we talk for the most part.
Yeah.
Because we take big pauses sometimes. And
we do take big pauses.
Yes. If you go back and listen to our episodes, Clarence, we sound so much smarter than we actually are because there's no hesitation between each of our phrases.
And it just seems like we know everything.
Yeah.
Because we speak so,
fluidly.
Yeah.
Yeah, no pause between those either.
Man, so powerful.
Additionally, the whole book section thing, I think it worked out okay. Definitely. I don't know if it's like the way that Worm is supposed to be approached, but there was some pros.
Yeah, I felt like I was able to sort of sort through the like arcs that felt like they went together more. And then once I sort of got a larger picture later on in some of the later, like the fifth, that kind of area, I feel like I was really beginning to understand the like starts and stops of it, I guess, if that makes sense.
Like how the like plot arcs would begin and end. Yeah.
I feel like if I had read it completely all the way through, in one singular reading, I don't know if I would have had as much of a say about like the rhythm of fighting and like the rhythm of writing, like just because I feel like I would just have read it really like frantically because I would want to know what's happening. I feel like I wouldn't have acknowledged that sort of like balance.
Yeah, I'm on the same page. I mean, my first read was definitely extremely frantic. I don't know how frantic, but very frantic. I remember being on a fancy trip and like reading Arc 8 in the middle of the night up until like 4 a.m. or something, which totally did not. My family was not happy about the next day. I was like, but the book is really good. So
I feel like that was just like me as a child.
Yeah.
Was
just leave me at home. I can travel wherever I want.
I have to just.
The pages.
I feel like that was just my nose was in a book for like the entirety of middle school. It didn't really matter what book it was. It was just sort of like whatever I found in the library.
Do you ever remember that phenomenon where like you would just read literally anything? I would be in the bathroom, right? And then I would just start reading the backs of bottles or whatever of soap and like being interested in it too. So strange. Voracious.
Yeah. I read some like weird shit.
Like
I don't know what it is about like bookstores and me, but I feel like I always find the really odd things.
Like what?
I don't know. There was some book about like frogs, but it was also like this painting. This guy was in love with the painting, but then like I don't know if they were people or like other beings, but they like cloned the lady in the painting and he kept seeing her and it was like all of her bodies. There was like 5 of them and he was being followed and it was just this whole thing.
What?
I don't even know. I'm sure it's buried somewhere in my like books. It was an odd book. It was an odd
Every
book.
detail you added made that so much more interesting. Frogs, but about a guy obsessed with a painting, except these beings.
I think she was like some sort of queen something.
Oh, okay, of course.
I don't know. It was a
weird... So if y'all can diagnose what either give us the book or just diagnose Clarence as
me and my strange book collection.
Yes. Ugh. Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
I do want to read that, whatever it is. So
I'll see if I can find it so I can tell you the title.
Please.
Yes. That was earlier. If I wanted to talk about any of that.
Which thing?
All these things about how we feel about.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Decomposing Worm.
Yeah, I don't think we're done with that section.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was just thinking about, like, what particular things, like, in terms of writing, what the process of writing for a podcast is like. Because we originally came into this thinking, like, we're going to write essays. And then it sort of just, like, turned into this, like, documented thinking process that took on the feeling of essays, but then there was this whole, like, amorphous, like, bit of the writing that happens when you talk.
Yeah.
Where it, like, becomes something else even after you write it. Because I feel like I had many, many moments where I was like, I've come to a conclusion that I did not think I was going to get to.
Yeah.
In the process of explaining things.
Yeah.
Or I would say something and be like, I don't agree with what I said. So it was just this very, like, it felt like slightly out of the strictures of essay writing, but, like, still within that sort of, like, revision.
Yeah, it's sort of like you are writing another draft as you speak.
Yeah.
And because, you keep a lot of stuff from your older drafts, right? You might even keep most of it, but you're going to do little edits as you go, and then we'll end up a little bit different. So it's very similar, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really interesting speaking from, like, a script. Because I feel like I was, like, constantly doing that.
Yeah.
Of sort of, like, reevaluating what I had written down.
Yeah. So people ask us for our scripts sometimes, and it's like some of them, especially our summaries, I think I could post and they would be pretty accurate to what we said, right? But, like, for this episode, at least my essays, there's just a jumble where I was actually going back and forth on them. They were mostly copy-pasted stuff from, like, other writings I'd done, and just to keep everything on the page so I could, like, look at it if I had to. So
yeah, I feel like these episodes particularly were, like, sort of like a collage of things.
Yeah.
That we sort of, like, threw down on the table and then kind of sifted through as we were talking.
Yeah, there was, and then they also differed from, like, episode to episode so much. Like, one time I would write, an entire...
The consistency was very much not there.
Yeah, no. But the thing is, the output, I think, was fairly consistent, so...
I know, that's so interesting.
Yeah, so sometimes I would write out basically everything I was going to say, almost as I was going to say it, in script form, right? And other times I would just write a bunch of bullet points in an order that I want to read them in. And other times I would just put down quotes and then eventually say something that makes sense. So,
I feel like that is, like, reflective of the way that I do pre-writing, though. Is every time that I pre-write, it's just a bit different than any other time. Where, like, I mean, there'll be writing in all of this, but there's always, like, there's some slightly different way that I will have accumulated whatever it was.
I think I follow.
And it's not that I'm, like, improving. It's just different.
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, you're trying a bunch of different iterations, and they're all dependent on the material you're working with. Although not necessarily, like, one-to-one. Like, it's just... Yeah, different. Yeah, no, I get that. Makes sense. Okay, yeah. So we've definitely learned a lot about writing. I think writing summaries is going to be so much easier going forward. After we found our rhythm with that, it got so much easier. Writing essays was still difficult. But
I feel like essay writing is always going to be so.
And mostly it was the episodes where we had to use a new literary theory that were the hardest for me, because it was like I had to read a new literary theory, figure out how to apply it to Worm, and make it not bad, and that was hard. So yeah, and sound like I know what I'm talking about, which I don't. So
yeah, that's the hard part. Is to sound like you know what you're talking about.
Yeah. We are not experts, y'all. We read a couple books. That's it. I didn't even read most of the books all the way through. So, like, no, just count me as in, like, going in the right direction, and then please find the rest of the way yourself. Like,
yeah.
Do some reading, though. Go read Terry Eagleton's Introduction to Literary Theory. It's not even that much.
Yeah, that one's a pretty decent one to get through.
Yeah. If you want a really fucky mind-bendy one that I just really like thinking about sometimes, every time I feel like I know what it says every time. Or this is Simulacra and Simulation by Jean Baudrillard.
Yes, I've begun reading.
Oh,
that.
You have?
Multiple times.
How are you enjoying that?
I haven't finished reading it.
How are you enjoying the part that you have read?
It's very interesting. I don't know if I fully understand.
No, that's the thing. I always feel like I know what I'm talking about when I'm thinking about it, right? But as soon as I write things down, I'm like, wait, what? Mm-hmm. It's the kind of thing where, like, I might have mentioned this before, but where as you're reading it, it starts to make sense, but as soon as you look away, it doesn't. As soon as you like try to actually articulate it, it doesn't.
Yeah.
But it's the inspiration behind the Matrix. Actually, everyone, the Wachowskis made everyone read it, all the cast, and some people loved it, some people hated it, and like didn't understand it at all. It's only 40,000 words. It's a like novella length. And actually, Clarence, there is a quote-unquote translation of it. It was originally written in French, but this is not what I'm talking about. It's a translation from the English version to the normal English version. Like when someone says, speak English, please. Yeah, someone did that. And so it's the entire text, all like the entire length of the text, right?
Yeah.
In a like full of cursing and dumbed down language, including memes, thing, and it's online for free. I think it's what's it called? So it might not actually be the entire thing, but it is a lot. It is very long. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so this is on continent.cc. So if you search continent and then the procession of simulacra, translated from English into American, translated by one Sean Joseph Patrick Carney. Any of those keywords should pop up. It's pretty good. I think it's actually on a Tumblr site. I'm not sure. I don't know. But let me just read the very beginning because why not? It says, Procession of Simulacra. You think you understand the fucking real, man? Try this shit on for size. The simulacrum is never that which conceals the truth. It is the truth which conceals that there is none. The simulacrum is true. Ecclesiastes. Boom. That's all bold, all caps. Fucking truth bomb. You're like, what's a simulacrum? It's Latin for copying shit. Anyway, it's pretty well done. And it actually gets you to understand what it's saying.
Okay, I'll have to look it up.
I'll link it to you later. Anyway, I've wasted 10 minutes on this. Yeah, if you want something fucky to read, that one, maybe I'll link it in the description. Yeah, so that was the difficult part. It was with bringing in those difficult things, explaining them, making it sound like I know what I'm talking about, all, in the short time period, because I can't do things ahead of time, especially not in the summer, especially not at home, especially not during a pandemic.
Yeah, there's so many things that sort of untether us.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's what we have for y'all on Decomposing Worm. Yeah. That's what we had.
It's been a trip.
It was.
It's been a ride.
You've read Worm, Clarence, and we've reflected on it. Oh my goodness.
I know.
You're a worm now.
I'm a worm?
Yes, you're a worm now. That's what they call parahumans fans. Actually, what is we're the parahuman fandom. What are like? Are we just like parahumans? Is that what we are? Right? Like as members of the fandom. What's our name? I mean, parahumans is better than Hulakians. So at least there's that.
That's
a low bar.
We don't need to go down that path.
What are Homestuck fans called? Homestuckians? Homestuckers? Trolls?
I don't know.
Well,
you were talking about that, right? It's
yes.
A narrative?
Yes. It's wild. No, I spoke about it at the Doof meeting, because we have meetings with all of us. I don't remember why. Oh yeah, I just wanted to call them all old because they don't know the experience. I'm surprised you don't either, actually. So Homestuck was what?
Oh, no. All I know is that people talk about it sometimes.
Well, so Homestuck...
But it seems very polarized.
Oh, yeah, because a lot of people think it's trash and are really annoyed with the fandom, and then probably almost everyone who's read it can probably agree that it's, like, a really good, work, right? Mm-hmm. I haven't. I got stuck at the beginning. The beginning is really terrible. Everyone can agree on that much. But it's sort of a web comic game serial. It's kind of complicated to explain, but it's like it pretends that it's a game, but it's not really. It's a story. I'm not entirely sure of the particulars, but what the reason I brought it up is because they don't know the other Doof members don't know the experience of going to school and seeing your fellow classmates dressed up in full troll regalia. The entire costume of the trolls, as in like wearing horns of different varying sizes, and a lot of stripes.
I feel like I just wouldn't have noticed that.
You know what? Yeah, that seems like you. You'd be like, oh, that's just a fun thing.
It's Thursday.
Yeah, Thursday they wear horns. Thursday we wear horns. And occasionally they would come in full gray makeup. It's just full gray, and that was like a whole that wasn't just one person. That was a whole clique.
Like a whole group of them.
Yes. Which, honestly, I'm envious of. That's such a baller move. Coming in dressed up like that, that's badass. Like, nerdiest thing I've ever seen. But, I mean, I definitely wish that I could... Commit. Yeah, I definitely wish that I could dress up as a monster every day I went to school. Like, that just feels right. I want antlers, damn it. Anyway, speaking of doofs, let's say some stuff that's going on in Doof Media right now. Clarence, can you tell me a little bit about a certain episode that's coming out the same day we are?
Yes. Both of us were on Pale Reflections. That's right. On the reflecting arc for the 4th arc. Yes. Leaving a mark. And it was very fun and cool. Boone and Elliot are very nice. And Pale is super interesting. And I'm very excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, you read all 4 arcs of Pale, which is that's like 500,000 words at this point, or 400,000.
I read it this week.
Yeah, I don't know how you did that or why. You had plenty of time before Clarence.
I did definitely had plenty of time. Who knows? Who knows why I didn't? All I know is that it's I'm in it now.
You are in it. Are you gonna stay caught up? Do you think, or are you gonna let it go and then catch up and then?
I'll probably be half an arc behind.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. See, I do that because I really like binging, and I really like reading a bunch of chapters and then catching up on Pale Reflections, right?
Yeah.
But I really also do miss being on the very front line of being in the discussion threads when an episode comes out, because that's a lot of fun, and getting to participate in that hype. But I haven't in a while. Maybe I should catch up fully these last couple chapters and then do that. So
yeah, I feel like I notice more things when I read all the way through, because it's present in my mind.
Right, but you also probably miss some from going so fast.
That's true.
So
yeah.
You hit
it's kind of a give or take.
The broader stuff for sure, though. So the same day that this episode comes out is us. We talk about it for a whole hour and a half. Talk about Snowdrop, about how wonderful she is. We talk about no spoilers though. I'm not spoiling anything. I just now there's a character named Snowdrop, I guess. And so many wonderful things in there.
Wonderful things.
The other thing I want to plug, because I kept forgetting to plug it this entire time, or at least for a while, check out What You Say, the most wholesome podcast on the network, where Scott and Elise Daly cover the soap opera. Is it a soap opera? I think it's a soap opera. The OC, episode by episode, in a very amusing and wholesome way, and they're just lovely. And no, you don't need to watch the OC to enjoy What You Say. You just need to enjoy them gossiping about characters, and just enjoy drama. I'm never going to watch the OC. It's not going to happen.
Would you call 90210 a soap opera?
I don't know. I don't watch that either. I have taste.
Well, it's like Dawson's Creek. Oh my god. These are things that we have inherited.
Uh-huh.
But I don't know if they're soap operas.
I think they are.
I guess so.
I guess my idea of a soap opera is so wrapped up with Spanish soap operas that it's
Yeah. In my head, it's like telenovela.
So much worse. Spanish soap operas are really bad, y'all.
They're so fun.
No, they're fun, but they're really bad. Okay, yeah. These are soap operas because Grey's Anatomy is a soap opera. That's the same thing.
Oh, It's very emotional, Grey's Anatomy. I was not expecting that.
I will never let myself continue watching it. It's too addicting.
It's super addicting.
I just can't. No. You know what? You know what Grey's Anatomy is? Grey's Anatomy is a great argument to me of why immortality is a bad thing. Grey's Anatomy is like the thing that makes me understand that, okay, maybe endings are a good thing. Maybe we should have endings. Not necessarily because it's like gone on too long, like specifically, like it's, the quality has dropped. No, I just don't want it to be around anymore.
Yeah, like it just, but I mean, admittedly, like that sort of show has that sort of thing, right? Like General Hospital went on. Is General Hospital like still going on?
Is that a thing? That's such a terrible name for a show.
What? I mean, that was like the hot ticket, for a while.
General Hospital? Ugh.
Yeah.
Who named that? I've never heard of it.
What? This is television history.
I know Mad Men. I know that.
Mad Men. Yeah.
I've never seen that. I probably won't, but
and Days of Our Lives was like a thing.
Right. Yeah, that too. Yep.
There's just like this whole slew of them.
Yep.
No?
You know what I did watch? George Lopez. I don't know what his name of his sitcom is, but that
that does sound familiar.
Good Luck, Charlie.
Is that
Hannah Montana?
Disney?
Yeah, these are Disney shows.
Oh yeah. Well, that's like 2000s.
Yeah.
And like the
Sweet Life on Deck and Sweet Life with Zach and Cody.
Those don't have like quite as much like emotional turmoil.
Are you kidding me?
I feel like
every episode had me. I had. Sweet Life on Deck had Debbie Ryan. I had a crush on her, so like that. I mean, that was full of emotions to me.
Oh, I guess I don't know. I guess I just don't put Disney in the same
league bracket.
Yeah,
they do a lot of shows. Okay, you know what was the most like under such a tragedy that ended of Disney shows? Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide. That was so good. It was so good.
I feel like I remember that.
It was wonderful. It really helped me. At least I felt it did. Probably didn't, but
I don't know if I remember anything from it though.
I remember like 3 specific episodes. That's nothing else. Okay. I really just let the tangent roll. I guess I just don't want the podcast to end. We are right at the ending. We're like 2 lines from the end.
Close.
Why didn't I'm sorry, y'all. Let us know for next episode what you guys want us to do. It's not funny, Matias. It's just sad. But
it's not like we're done like forever.
No,
I mean,
we're coming back.
We do have things
plan.
on the horizon.
Yes.
On the periphery.
Well.
Good?
Yes.
All right. Well, for the Patreon.
If you like what we did here at Doof Media.
Yeah. If you like what we did here at Doof Media, you should consider donating for the Patreon. A single $1 or whatever else do we have like a list of
tiers?
Of what? Yeah, the tiers?
Yeah.
Is it like on the website?
Yeah, it's on the Patreon. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, you should check out
so pick
tiers.
Pick 1, 5, 10, 20, or 40, Clarence.
10.
At a $10 level, you get access to our bonus content, which are special episodes that members of the Doofast create. Right now, there's 2 series on there with another one coming up. The first one is Freeman Bros, where Matt Freeman and his brother talk about a bunch of intellectual stuff, and they're really smart, and they talked about MMOs recently. Then, of course, there is Doofovers, which me and Jarvis, we do anime good, basically, is what we're going with for now. Doing episodes of the Doofcast that didn't get the attention they deserved from anime lovers, and we probably will also do other stuff. I don't know. Yeah, and then one new thing that's coming up on the horizon on bonus content, something that Elliot's working on called The High Ground.
Haha.
Think about it. Think about what it might be about.
Contemplate.
Also, if you're on the Discord, maybe think about what terrible opinions Elliot has regarding something. Anyway.
Yeah, lots of things. So if you want to, access those, interact with the content that is available, then you should donate.
That's right. That would actually some of the money that you guys have sent in to the Patreon will actually be used to pay for our intro music for Dissecting Twig and for a good logo. Which we're very excited about seeing what we're going to be using the same music creator that created the intro for this. So I'm very excited to use them again and see what they'll be creating this time. Okay. If you, in addition to considering donating to us, consider donating to Wadbell's Patreon. He's the one that wrote Worm and Pact and Twig and Ward and Pale and all these wonderful things that we just adore.
Huge amounts that he's written, and he's like constructed this whole community.
Yes. I will one day have a pan Wildbow work tattoo. It's gonna happen. I'm gonna do it. I'm declaring it right now. I have an image in my mind, but it needs some fixing first. But yes.
Where would you put the tattoo?
I don't know. There's always arms, but like the thing that I'm thinking of is like not like large, but like medium size. Like So maybe like upper side chest. Perhaps.
That's a good place for tattoos.
Yes. I was thinking a twig with a sparrow on it and then also scarab on it. Now, the twig can represent twig, but I don't want it to. So probably something else to represent twig, but I don't know what yet. Maybe a meat hook.
Oh.
Hanging from them.
What an image.
Yes. It's on the essentially the cover art of Twig. Anyway, let's finish up. If you cannot donate, we totally understand. We just appreciate you guys listening and taking the time to go through 45 hours of content.
We're so glad you made it this far.
Yeah, why'd you do that? Why? Why did we do this?
Because everyone's so excited about it.
That's true. That's true. Your excitement has been wonderful, and we really, really appreciate seeing that. That was so encouraging.
Well, you guys have been like very welcoming into like the community. And I know I don't like talk a lot. Besides now, I mean, obviously I talk a lot. But yeah, everyone's been like super nice and enthusiastic.
Yeah. So a couple times some people asked where the music came from. Actually, I wanted to mention it's they go by Ianu. And you can follow their Instagram, and if you really want to, you can actually DM them for to make music if you would like. I'm not going to tell you the rates because that would be they might have changed. But they were very, very reasonable. So their Instagram is its.ianu. So that's ITS.IANU. So if you want some dope music, go check them out. They also have a Spotify, which is called Ianu Sound. So the same Ianu and then Sound on SoundCloud, I think. So now that the podcast is ending, you can send us an email again, as always, at decomposingpodcast@gmail.com. We're going to keep the decomposing as our like tag going forward, probably for Twig and any other, similar literary podcasts that we keep, probably anyway. So that would be decomposingpodcast@gmail.com. Or you can leave us comments in the discussion thread. We would love to read your final thoughts on the series as a whole and, maybe your excitement for Dissecting Twig. It's things you'll want to see or anything else. And if you leave any questions or stuff like that, we might answer them in the first Dissecting Twig episode, or maybe we'll do a little, Q&A or something like that if we have enough. Yeah. Or whenever we come back with an essay, if we ever do that. No promises. That's honestly, it's a low chance because I'll say that because I want to in the moment, and then I will just never want to again. Yeah.
You'll be like, next week.
And then I do that for 6 years. Yeah. But maybe 6 years from now. So, but you can also follow our Twitter, which is at Decomposing Pod. That's where you'll hear the first announcement of Dissecting Twig, whenever that is. And of course, also follow the Doof Media Twitter, if you haven't already, which is at Doof Media, where you can see announcements about all the podcasts and also anything else that we're doing in general, which you can see our announcements for when we're doing our Doof, what are they called? Not Doof Plays, shoot. Doof Hangout? No.
Doof and Chill?
Doof and Chill, thank you so much. Doof and Chill. Welcome. We're doing one actually in a couple weeks for Halloween, not on Halloween, I think the week before, right? It's on the calendar.
Yeah, the 24th.
The 24th, thank you so much. Where we're all going to be reading spooky stories. So I'm very excited about that one.
I'm super excited about it.
Oh gosh, I got to pick one, huh? Don't I? Oh no.
Are we writing it or
I think we're choosing, but we could probably write one. So see, the thing is, I have like one that was actually unsettling, and I don't know if I want to read it.
Yeah, is it like nice spooky or like bad spooky?
It's uncomfortable. Just physically. Anyway, also, if you want to, you can follow my Twitter, which is @podmatias, and I post a lot of stuff about depression and being queer. So, and sometimes I'm funny. Mostly it's depression.
You are funny on Twitter.
It's relatable, so, you know.
Yeah.
If you're a millennial, if you're or Gen Z, you know, in your alternative and lifestyle whatsoever, I would say you would enjoy my content.
You can also follow mine. It's being_Clarence, I think.
Yes.
I don't know how to classify what I do on there, but it's a collection of things I like and think.
Yes.
I guess.
And I mean, if Clarence, whenever you publish more things, because you're a wonderful poet, that will be where you post it, right? And that's where people can read it.
I'll tell people about my poetry.
He's a very good poet, y'all. Very, very good.
Yeah, I guess. But you know.
Yeah. All right. That's all we have for you on Decomposing Worm. Not for just this week, but forever.
Not forever.
Not forever.
Probably not forever.
Probably not forever. Okay.
All right. Here we are at the end.
Yeah. So there's a small chance there might be more, but as far as we know at this moment, this is it.
Yeah.
If only we had more time. If only we could talk on and on and on.
But alas, time is neither overabundance or underabundance, just kind of there, and we are left bereft in its perfectly timed wake.
And even though our podcast was long, about 45 hours, it's still ending. And you know, it makes me think, it makes me feel how we're so very short in the end. I'm hitting stop.
Yes. The end.